Chapter 441. After activating the Herculean bull demon body, as his body continued to grow and his muscles bulged, Tsaogwa felt that the pressure in the pagoda had greatly decreased and was no longer able to affect him much. Sword Young Master, who was lying on the ground, looked at him with envy. The difference between having a sword spirit and not having one was like heaven and earth. He had wanted to compete with Tsaogwa earlier, but he had overestimated himself. While feeling envious, Sword Young Master looked at the entrance of the 9th floor, hoping to see a familiar figure there. But he knew that was just a wild guess. Qin Hao would not appear. He had heard from Tsaogwa that Qin Hao's mental power was only at the weak 5th grade. To be able to reach the 9th floor? Unless the sun rose from the west. The heavens are blind. Even Sword Young Master felt pity for Qin Hao. He clearly had a powerful strength, but his aptitude was so mediocre he was destined to have no future. And if he lost this time, he would be at Tian Buoguang's mercy for the rest of his life. There was nothing more tragic than this. But suddenly, a figure appeared at the entrance of the 9th floor. Sword Young Master thought that it was an illusion. He shook his head, but the figure was still faintly visible. He was instantly shocked. Which genius was able to reach the incomparably difficult 9th floor? In his impression, there was no candidate with such ability. Even if there was, they would have been killed by Qin Hao like the red-clothed man, Wangge Long Fun. They were either dead or crippled. Who could it be? Oh, you guys are indeed here. Why is Brother Sword lying on the ground? A familiar voice sounded. The figure had already arrived beside him. As the distance got closer, Qin Hao's face gradually became clearer. Sword Young Master's mouth opened wider and wider. He could not help but say, Qin Hao, damn it, a 5th grade mental power reached the 9th floor? Oh heavens! Oh earth! Who the hell is it? Save my eyes. Sword Young Master felt that he was blind. Just a moment ago, he had determined that Qin Hao was stuck at the bottom. In the next second, Qin Hao was right in front of him. What was a surprise? This was a surprise. Big brother? When he heard Sword Young Master's strange shout, Tsaogwa subconsciously turned around, and his heart suddenly twitched. His face was filled with disbelief. Didn't Big Brother only have level 5 spiritual power? Didn't he say that he was stuck on the 6th floor? I'm the only hope to save Daqin Prefecture. Instantly, Tsaogwa felt unwell. Of course, he was actually very happy, even though he was shocked to death. I'm not bad. Qin Hao strode forward in a carefree manner, and he disregarded the enormous pressure on the 9th floor as if it was nothing. Under the Sword Young Master's eyes that were about to pop out, he walked to Tsaogwa's side and stretched out his hand with the intention of patting Tsaogwa's shoulder. Unfortunately, Tsaogwa was too tall after transforming. He was more than twice as tall as Qin Hao. Therefore, Qin Hao's hand could barely reach Tsaogwa's buttocks. Therefore, his slapping action was somewhat indecent. Tsaogwa pointed at Qin Hao, his fingers trembling. Don't be surprised. Actually, my spiritual power is level 10. Qin Hao smiled, guessing Tsaogwa's thoughts, and explained simply. I say, letting out a deep breath. Tsaogwa suppressed the shock in his heart. Thinking about it, how could a level 5 spiritual power reach the 9th floor? Big Brother was really hiding his strength. On the other hand, you just broke through to the 5th stage of the origin spirit and already have a level 10 spiritual power, which surprised me. Qin Hao praised, seeing Tsaogwa's spiritual grade. Tsaogwa's situation was rather special. People with origin spirit, their spiritual grade was a growth type. Even if it was low at the beginning, it would slowly become stronger in the future. But the level 5 origin spirit, Tsaogwa, had a level 10 spiritual power. Once his Herculean bull demon body was completely formed, how high would his spiritual grade be? Just thinking about it made one's heart skip a beat. So what if he's level 10? He was still surpassed by Tian Buoguang. Tsaogwa gave a bitter smile. Just now, Tian Buoguang had entered the 10th floor, and Qi Xiaohua had watched helplessly as he entered. Other than him, there's another person. Big Brother, guess who it is? Oh, Qin Hao's eyebrows slightly jumped up. Tian Buoguang entering the 10th floor was not surprising. There was actually another person who was not weaker than Tian Buoguang. Could it be? Xianchen? Xiaowa nodded. The boss was the boss, hitting the nail on the head. The geniuses participating in the New Star competition were all slaughtered by Qin Hao. Other than Sword Young Master, there was only Bu Xianchen left. Bu Xianchen was truly ruthless, following closely behind Tian Boguang. No, it should be said that the two of them were walking side by side. Neither of them was weak. Let's go. Qin Hao did not dare be negligent, pulling the other side along as they ran. AI. The two of you, it's not right for you to risk your life like this. Sword Young Master, who was lying on the ground, began to preach. The correct way to climb the demon's subduing pagoda was to take one step at a time. The most taboo was to rush recklessly. It was like a race. You could originally run 1,000 meters, but in the end, you rushed 100 meters at the beginning, causing you to become weaker and weaker, unable to hold on for the last 1,000 meters. It was too wasteful, too reckless. But on the other hand, Qin Hao was completely unmoved. Not only can I run, but I can also jump, and I can even do stretching exercises turning 360 degrees in the air. Thus, in the blink of an eye, he pulled Xiaowa and disappeared. On the 9th floor, only Sword Young Master was left alone. Monster! He could not help but sigh, and a trace of a smile appeared on his face. Sword Young Master silently blessed, hoping that Qin Hao could catch up to Tian Boguang's footsteps in time. Outside the demon subduing pagoda, a black mass of people surrounded the pagoda, 3 circles inside and 3 outside, completely impenetrable. They were all pointing at the flickering light spots in the pagoda, and the sound of discussion could be heard. At this time, there were no more light spots floating below the 6th floor. Most of the contestants were stuck on the 6th and 7th floors. There was only one light spot on the 8th floor. There were originally 3 light spots on the 9th floor, and now 2 of them were quickly approaching the 10th floor. However, there were already 2 light spots competing on the 10th floor. My grandson really didn't embarrass me. He's already reached the 10th floor in less than 2 hours. If you want to say who's the strongest in Western Liang, it's only Star Moon Divination Guan. Tian Shulin's voice rumbled, and his face was full of pride. In response, everyone nodded at the same time. One of the 2 light spots on the 10th floor must belong to Tian Boguang. But who's the other one? It should be Qin Hao. Some people muttered softly. After saying that, they looked at Tian Shulin fearfully, afraid that they would make this old man unhappy. Impossible. The other light spot on the 10th floor must be Bu Xianchen from our Decimo Academy. The one who spoke was the dean of Decimo Academy, Wang Gui's master, Dean Fong. His tone was extremely firm. Dean Fong, how can you be so sure that the other light spot is Miss Xianchen? Someone asked, unconvinced. Bu Xianchen's strength was far inferior to Qin Hao's. This was a fact, unless her spiritual grade had reached the 10th grade. If that was the case, it was indeed shocking. A 10th grade spiritual grade was definitely among the true geniuses in Western Liang. Chapter 442. As the dean, he was well aware of the student's family background. Yet, someone dared to question him. Dean Fong cursed inwardly. He raised his nose and said, "Our student, Xianchen, is the 3rd princess of the Celestial Dragon Kingdom, the 4th empire in Western Liang. She was born with a 10th level spiritual power, and her mastery of the art of enchantment is extraordinary. She's on the 10th floor." Dean Fong's heart ached as he thought of his disciple who had passed away. It was all because of that goddamn Qin Hao. There must be a king turtle among those who reached the 10th floor. You're right. Everyone nodded. If Tian Boguang was on the 1st floor, the other must be Bu Xianchen. Shifang Academy was really full of talents. Sigh. Although our student Xianchen can't be compared to someone with an 11th level spiritual power, old man dares to say that she's the number 1 person below the 11th level. Dean Fong said proudly. He even deliberately showed off in front of Tian Shulin. He meant to tell him, "Sorry, Dean Tian, but our student Xianchen is likely to defeat your grandson. Born with a 10th level spiritual power? Not bad," Tian Shulin said calmly, with a hint of disdain in his tone. "Keep pretending. Let's see if you can still maintain your composure when Tian Boguang loses." Dean Fong sneered inwardly, but he didn't dare to be so presumptuous. The others also thought that Tian Shulin was showing off, so they asked, Dean Tian, what level of spiritual power does it take to pass? 8th level. Tian Shulin answered without hesitation. Naturally, his words stirred up 1,000 ripples. 8th level spiritual power? Not to mention the freshmen of the 4 academies. Even if all the seniors in the inner yard were counted, no one would pass. What level is your grandson Boguang's spiritual power? Someone asked. Tian Shulin was waiting for this question. He laughed out loud. What a coincidence. My grandson Boguang's spiritual power just happens to pass. He's at 11th level. He said it casually, but the pride on his face almost shot to the sky. Crack. This sentence was like a clap of thunder, exploding around the Yao-subduing pagoda and striking the depths of everyone's hearts. He had hit the H spot. Tian Boguang possessed level 11 spiritual power? They weren't dreaming, were they? It was really scary. Chief Tian, I didn't hear it clearly just now. Please repeat it again. What is your grandson's spiritual grade? Director Fong had just been pleased with himself when Tian Shulin poured a bucket of cold water on him. He was also unwilling to give up and asked. Cough, cough. Tian Shulin cleared his throat and pointed at Dean Fong's nose. Listen carefully. My grandson's spiritual level is an unprecedented 11th grade. He just barely passed. This time, Tian Shulin's voice was very grand, causing many people to be dumbstruck after hearing it. In the next second, the sound of people fainting could be heard. This was too shocking. That was the 11th rank. Based on this, Tian Boguang was practically the #1 person in the land of Western Liang. He had broken a miracle that almost no one had broken before. It was not until this moment that everyone suddenly realized why Tian Boguang wanted to compete with Qin Hao in terms of spiritual power, and even made an agreement to do as you please. This was clearly a trap. As his grandfather, Tian Shulin knew Tian Boguang very well, which was why he did not stop him. This originated from absolute confidence. Then there was no need to compete anymore. Qin Hao was 80% sure to lose. In fact, after knowing Tian Boguang's level 11 spiritual power, everyone present had already seen the result of the competition in advance. Qin Hao was bound to lose. Medicine jar. What do you think of my grandson's aptitude? Tian Shulin deliberately walked in front of Yao Lao and smiled coldly. Level 11? It's really not bad. Yao Lao replied unhurriedly, but his palms were already sweating. He had learned from Yuningshang that Qin Hao's spiritual power had reached the 10th level in the Four Nations martial arts tournament. In Yao Lao's opinion, it was impossible for anyone to have a higher spiritual grade than Qin Hao. Who would have thought that Tian Shulin's grandson actually had a level 11 spiritual power? This was bad. At this moment, Yao Lao was actually very nervous, but he could not show weakness in front of Tian Shulin. He continued, the level of spiritual power can't completely determine a person's fate. Sometimes miracles are born. So now it's hard to say who is stronger between Qin Hao and your grandson. Keep going. Watch. Watch. Watch my ass. If I were you, I'd ride your big bird back to Qiyang University and never show your face again. Don't you feel ashamed? I want to kill myself for you now. Tian Shulin did not care about his image and scolded him. At this point, the medicine jar was still trying to be brave. How could Qin Hao, this trash, compare to his grandson's level 11 spiritual power? It would be best if he angered Yao Lao and left now. Tian Shulin was actually very worried that the other party would go back on his words. If Qin Hao lost, what would happen if Yao Lao protected him? So Tian Shulin's real intention was to get out of here and not ruin the old man's plans. At the same time, he glanced at the three-legged golden crow hovering in the sky. His eyes were full of fear and envy. This big bird was really King scary. In the face of Tian Shulin's provocation, Yao Lao chose to ignore it. He could only wait patiently for the results of the competition. Even if Qin Hao lost in the end, in his heart, he would still be a unique talent. He would not allow anything to happen to Qin Hao. The 10th floor of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Completely different from the first floor, the space here was a vast white world. The sky and earth were one, like a snow-covered wasteland. At this moment, not far from the exit of the 10th floor, two figures were gritting their teeth and moving forward. One was Tian Buguang, the other was Bushanshan. Sweat flowed down their cheeks and dripped to their feet. Even if their bodies and minds were exhausted and their minds were in a daze, neither of them was willing to stop for even a second. They used all their strength to move toward the exit. As for Bushanshan, she had lost in the first round of the actual combat competition and had no chance of entering the top 5. This time, she could not lose again. She could not embarrass the Tian Long royal family. Tian Buguang, who was watching from the side, felt like 10,000 donkeys were scurrying around. His face was extremely ugly, and he could not help but curse. His mentality was at the 11th level. Logically speaking, he should have gotten first place, because he had not seen Qin Hao's shadow until now. But who would have thought that Bushanshan would appear halfway and rely on her mentality of the 10th level? Her speed was not slower than his at all. He could not shake her off. So one could imagine the struggle in Tian Buguang's heart. Miss Xianshan, you should just admit defeat. You should know that every level of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda firmly suppresses the corresponding spiritual level. With your 10th level spiritual power, you won't be able to walk out of the 10th level. You want to fight me? You're just wasting your energy. Chapter 443. He could clearly feel that he was losing a lot of his spiritual power. He was afraid that he couldn't make it to the 11th floor. Bushanshan was unmoved. Although she couldn't surpass Tian Buguang, she didn't fall behind either. She was still persevering, but more and more sweat appeared on her forehead. Miss Xianshan, you're doing very well. At least you're much better than Qin Hao, that piece of trash. I'm not trying to hurt your confidence, but you can't be compared to me. No matter how hard you work, it'll be in vain. You can't get first place even if you try your best. Just give up. Give up. Tian Buguang continued to persuade her. As long as Bushanshan gave up the competition, he would be the first. But the other party didn't stop, which annoyed Tian Buguang. How about this? As long as you give up, I'll give you a lot of benefits when we get out. My grandfather will teach you an earth-level technique. In addition, I'll give you 50,000 Xian crystals from my own pocket. How about that? Since he couldn't persuade her, Tian Buguang decided to seduce her. An earth-level technique and 50,000 Xian crystals. In his opinion, Bushanshan would definitely agree. But the result disappointed him. Bushanshan still didn't stop. Miss Xianshan, don't push your luck. 50,000 Xian crystals is a lot, but I can add another 10,000. How about 60,000? As long as you give up, you could get it easily. This time, Bushanshan definitely wouldn't refuse. Tian Buguang's lips curled into a smile as he thought to himself. I say, why do you have so much bullshit to say? You think you're so great because you have a grandfather? You think you're so great because you have an earth-level technique? Is 60,000 Xian crystals a lot? Why don't you kneel down and call me Grand Aunt 10,000 times? I'll give you 100,000 Xian crystals. Bushanshan couldn't bear it anymore. She glared at Tian Buguang and was disappointed with his style. A competition was a competition. Only by competing with each other could the contestants become stronger. Only when there was a pursuit could there be fun. Tian Buguang kept trying to attack others, but when he couldn't, he threw out temptations. He didn't have the demeanor of a genius. Compared to Qin Hao's character, Tian Buguang was trash to the horizon. UB*TCH. Tian Buguang was immediately enraged. He had tried his best to coax Bushanshan, but Bushanshan refused to budge. Fine. Since you don't know what's good for you, I'll let you understand the cruelty of reality. Originally, I used this move to guard against Qin Hao, but that trash is nowhere to be seen. Forget it. As he spoke, Tian Buguang stopped. His interspatial ring flashed, and a red pill appeared in his hand. The pill was incomparably dense. This is Spirit Clear Pill? Bushanshan's expression changed as he exclaimed. The spirit refreshing pill had the effect of nourishing a person's spiritual energy. For the two people who had exhausted their spiritual energy, it was undoubtedly incomparably precious. After eating it, Tian Boguang could instantly relieve the pressure on him and leave Bu Xianchen behind. Your eyesight is not bad. That's right. It is indeed a spirit-refreshing pill. However, it is not an ordinary spirit-refreshing pill. It is a 5 revolutions spirit-refreshing pill. Give up. With a wave of his hand, Tian Boguang popped the pill into his mouth. As soon as it entered his stomach, his weakened mind was shaken, and he immediately became spirited again. The spirit-refreshing pill could not strengthen one's spiritual energy, but could have a restorative effect. This 5 revolutions spirit-refreshing pill was not easy to come by. Tian Boguang firmly believed that he had the trump card to defeat Qin Hao. Unless he had no other choice, he really did not want to waste it. Now, it was simply too easy for the energetic Tian Boguang to leave the fatigued Bu Xianchen behind. You can forget about leaving the 10th floor in your lifetime, but I can reach the 11th floor in one go. Damn bitch. With a fierce flick of his sleeve, Tian Boguang moved forward again. This time, he took a huge step forward and widened the distance between the two of them. At this time, his legs were no longer sore, so he took more than 30 steps in one go. He was only 10 meters away from the exit. He was already far ahead. Damn it! Bu Xianchen hurried to catch up. How could she be willing to fall behind? However, she was too weak. In her desperation, she did not stand firm and staggered to the ground. Suddenly, a sense of defeat and deep powerlessness filled her beautiful face. She had tried her best, but she could not hold on any longer. Even though she was very unhappy with Tian Boguang, she knew that it was impossible for her to catch up to him. At this time, she really hoped that someone could stand up in her place and teach that arrogant and shameless guy a lesson. Immediately, Qin Hao's face flashed in her mind. That seemingly invincible man. Bu Xianchen was stunned and then smiled bitterly. Qin Hao. It was impossible. Maybe he was already stuck on the 6th floor. Even Xiaohua did not have the chance to enter the 10th floor. Miss Xiangchen. An unexpected voice suddenly sounded beside her. Damn, who was it? Bu Xianchen hurriedly looked up and saw someone who should not have appeared. No, it should be an unbelievable face. Qin Hao. She was shocked. Brother, are you a god? You appear when I miss you? Can you not appear so suddenly? It's very scary. Why are you squatting on the ground? Don't you think it's cold? Qin Hao reached out and pulled her up. His palm was very strong and warm. Do you think I want to squat on the ground? Bu Xianchen rolled her eyes at him and saw a monster standing beside Qin Hao. This monster, well, it was very ferocious. However, Bu Xianchen was not afraid because it was Xiaohua's other form. She had seen it before. If you really can't do it, go back the way you came. If you fall on the ground again, there won't be a kind-hearted person like me to help you. Qin Hao joked. He shifted his gaze to the front and saw a figure moving slowly like a tortoise. Qin Hao was no stranger to this figure. It was Tian Boguang, whom he was chasing. You too can do it. Don't lose to that scumbag. Bu Xianchen waved her little fist at Qin Hao and gave him an encouraging look like a beautiful girl. She pursed her lips and looked unwillingly at the exit of the 10th floor. She wanted to go out and see the 11th floor of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, but in the end, she shook her head and went back the way she came. The pressure in the pagoda was very high. It was not a good thing to stay for too long. Bu Xianchen was not like Lin Feng, who had encountered an opportunity to break through. Leaving was the wisest choice for her. Qin Hao. When Bu Xianchen left, Tian Boguang was already shouting hoarsely. He slowly turned his head. When he saw Qin Hao, his eyes were bloodshot. He thought that Qin Hao was stuck at the bottom. He looked for Qin Hao for a long time, but could not find him. He was sure that Qin Hao would lose. But just when he was about to win first place, this guy who should not have appeared again. How have you been? Qin Hao gave him a standard cold smile. You mother asterisk her. I hate you to the core. Tian Boguang squeezed through his teeth. Same to you. A cold light flashed in Qin Hao's eyes. Big brother, why are you talking to him? Let's go. Chapter 444. This distance was not far. Within 100 meters, it seemed to be close at hand. But for Xiaohua, it was so far away. It was not so easy to climb to the 11th floor. When his first step landed on the 10th floor, he was firmly crushed by an unshakable sense of oppression. This force made people unable to break free, like an invisible iron cage. Even if he activated the Herculean bull demon body, he could not resist. Under this pressure, Tsayogua's body shrank an inch with every step he took. Perhaps before he could reach the exit, he would be beaten back to his original size. Moreover, at this time, he and Xin Hao were still more than 60 meters away from Tianbo. This distance was not long, but it was very difficult to catch up. Ha ha ha! Your steps are weak. Did you not eat enough? Seeing Tsayogu was struggling, Tianbo immediately put down the worry in his heart and became proud. The pressure on the 10th floor was 4 times out of the 9th floor. He felt it deeply. Even with his rank, 11 mentality, it took a lot of effort for him to walk. Xin Hao and Tsayogu did not have the ability to climb to the 11th floor. Want to catch up with him? That was impossible. However, Tianbo took this spirit-refreshing pill, and now his mental strength was very strong. Xin Hao and Tsayogu could not catch up with him. Want to fight with me? Why don't you take a piss and look at your faces? If you have the ability to catch up with me, quickly surpass me. Unfortunately, you can only fantasize. There's no harm in this young master speaking bluntly. Xin Hao, you've lost for sure. I want you to watch with your own eyes as I walk further and further away step by step. In the end, I'll reach the 11th level and pluck the fruit of first place. And you, there is nothing you can do. How pitiful are you? How tragic are you? This is the enemy of me, Tianbo. You will be a slave for the rest of your life. Tianbo said with a fierce look. His heart was very happy, but in the next second, his eyes bulged out of their sockets. Although Tsayogu was struggling to walk, Xin Hao looked very relaxed. Even that ease was not comparable to Tianbo. This is impossible, he said in a daze, his face scrunched up. This was the 10th floor. Even his rank, 11 mentality, could not last for long. Why did it feel like Xin Hao was completely unaffected? In fact, the reason why Xin Hao didn't chase after them now was that he was waiting for Tsayogu. Damn it! Tianbo's mood immediately soured. A trace of fear gradually rose from the bottom of his heart to the top of his head. He didn't dare to stay any longer. He was afraid that Xin Hao would overtake him. He immediately turned around and walked towards the 11th floor. So much so that after taking the clear spirit pill, he activated his flame source spirit body. His entire body was covered in flames as he rushed forward. Behind him, it was as if he was being chased by a ruthless devil. Big brother, I can't hold on any longer. Don't worry about me. Let's go. After Tsayogu persisted for 30 meters, his body completely degenerated to its original state. At this moment, he pushed Xin Hao forward. Don't delay your own time because of me. My father and the entire Daqin prefecture are waiting for us to go home. Don't let Sister Wanqin down. Don't let Chi down. The vice president of a Yang Academy is disappointed. Let's go. Plop. Tsayogu fell to the ground, holding his stomach and twitching. His expression was very painful. The pressure of the 10th floor far exceeded the load of his body. Take care of yourself. Xin Hao couldn't bear it. He raised his hand and a strong yuan qi entered Tsayogu's body. He turned around and chased after Tianbo. He couldn't share Tsayogu's pain. The only thing he could do was to share his strength with the other party so that Tsayogu could leave safely. Big brother, I've dragged you down again. Looking at Xin Hao's back, Tsayogu cried silently. As Xin Hao's yuan qi entered his body, his pain lessened a lot. He didn't dare to stay, and immediately returned the way he came. He prayed silently in his heart. Big brother, you must win. On the other side, Tianbo was only 3 steps away from the entrance of the 11th floor. As long as he could pass, he would be the champion of the second round of the spiritual power competition. He could wash away his shame, step on Xin Hao's head, and make Xin Hao his slave. He could also make the Dragon Abyss Emperor look at him in a different light, and in the future, he would be promoted and become rich. I'm number 1. I'm omnipotent. His face was ferocious, his body swaying. The soles of his feet were like falling mountains, rising and falling with difficulty. This was the first step. 2 more steps. Once again, he rose and fell. Poof! The flames on his body seemed to have been extinguished by a basin of cold water, and in an instant, he lost his protective shield. Suddenly, the torrential pressure in the tower attacked him. With a crack, Tian Buowang's foot landed on the ground, and his calf was fractured. "Ah! My leg, I'm crippled," he screamed at the top of his lungs, and blood began to flow from his mouth. At this moment, he was only 1 foot away from the entrance of the 11th floor. "I'm number 1. I'm the champion. I'm the strongest genius in the land of Western Liang. No one can surpass me." As if possessed, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the door of the 11th floor, and his paralyzed body climbed in. Whoosh! In the next second, the white world in front of him disappeared, and he felt as if he had returned to the 1st floor. The space was pitch black and endless. However, Tian Buowang smiled. Even though it was difficult to breathe, even though it was as if his asthma was acting up, he quickly sucked in cold air. But he knew that this was the real 11th floor. The pressure here was 5 times that of the 10th floor. He finally crushed Qin Hao. He succeeded, and at the same time, he knew that climbing to the 11th floor was his limit. It was impossible for him to take another step forward, even if it was just a little bit. "I can only stop here." Bean-sized beads of sweat rolled down his face, and Tian Buowang let out a sigh, but his face was incomparably proud. "Even if I stop at the 11th floor, I'm still the number 1. Qin Hao, that trash, can't catch up to me. My ancestor is the champion." At this moment, Tian Buowang looked up to the sky and cried. He let out a carefree howl, and he was practically hoarse. "Oh, what's so good for you to be so happy?" Stunned, a ghostly voice sounded behind him. Tian Buowang slowly turned his head. Crack! A bolt of lightning struck his dog eyes. He opened his mouth wide, and he was shocked. "Qin Hao," Tian Buowang pointed at him as if he had seen a ghost. At the entrance of the 11th floor, the person he didn't want to see the most appeared. "This is impossible. There's no justice. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. You're just trash in my eyes, but you're actually standing in the same position as me. I pee you." The more Tian Buowang spoke, the more anxious he became. He was so anxious that he spat out a mouthful of old blood on the ground for a long time. His heart was cold. The peach blossoms in the sky were cold, and the flourishing flowers turned into frost. "Why?" After a long time, he held onto the doorframe and said weakly, "Because my mental power is grade 12. Qin Hao used a sincere gaze to tell a big lie. Chapter 445. He had painstakingly planned and schemed, relying on his 11th grade spiritual power to suppress Qin Hao so that he would never be able to make a comeback and make a bet to be his slave. But in the end, everything he had done was just a disgrace to himself. Who would have thought that Qin Hao's spiritual power was as high as 12th grade? Tian Buowang's heart was sullen, but he still didn't give up. So what if you have 12th grade spiritual power? Don't think that you can still walk out after stepping on the 11th floor. In fact, you're the same as me. You can't climb to the 12th floor. In the end, you still can't beat me. Is that so? Qin Hao sneered. Then in front of Tian Buowang, he slowly raised his right foot and put it down calmly. His movements were so natural. Boom! A spicy fart crashed into Tian Buowang's head, causing his eyes to bulge. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it was true. In order to step on the 11th floor, his leg was fractured. He risked his life and climbed empathetically. The pressure on the 11th floor was 5 times that of the 10th floor. A full 5 times. But on Qin Hao, it was as if it didn't exist. You must be pretending and deliberately deceiving me. In fact, I'm afraid that you've already suffered a fatal internal injury under the pressure of the 11th floor. In order to humiliate me, you took the risk to take the first step. Tian Buowang deceived himself. Just as he finished speaking, Qin Hao took the second step with incomparable ease. It was still so natural. Boom! Tian Buowang's heart was torn apart. He grabbed his hair and shouted hoarsely, "You're lying to me. In fact, you're about to die." before you die, you still want to create an indelible fear in my heart. However, at this time, Qin Hao's third step had landed. He looked back at Tian Buoguang. Do I look like I've suffered a fatal internal injury? Like someone who's dying? Not only can I take the first, second, and third steps, but I can also take the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth steps. After saying that, he walked forward step by step. The distance between him and Tian Buoguang was getting farther and farther, until Qin Hao's figure completely disappeared in the dark space. It seemed to confirm what Tian Buoguang had just said. I want you to see with your own eyes that I walk further and further away step by step until I reach the top of the tower and pluck the fruit of victory. You, on the other hand, are at your wit's end. How pitiful are you? How tragic are you? This is the result of going against me, becoming a slave for the rest of your life. But in the end, their positions were reversed. Tian Buoguang became the slave and servant. There's one more thing. Listen to me clearly. In my eyes, aren't you also trash? In the endless darkness, Qin Hao's voice came from afar. It was as if these words had been floating around for a long time, telling Tian Buoguang that they were no longer in the same world. Qin Hao stood at the top of the tower, and Tian Buoguang was just an inconspicuous stepping stone. On the 11th floor, Qin Hao was still moving forward. He didn't know how long he had been walking and didn't know what Tian Buoguang's mood was at the moment. The more he walked, the more he felt that this space was strange, and there was always a kind of uneasy heartbeat. It was as if there was a sense of unknown fear. Although it couldn't be seen or touched, it could be clearly felt. Perhaps it was because of the unknown that this feeling of fear was strong. At the same time, he also found another discovery. His spiritual power gradually showed a sense of loss. No, it was a sense of weakness. This discovery shocked Qin Hao. He was the first generation of Dendi. Even if he lost his cultivation after his rebirth, his spiritual power was a real emperor level. Looking at the whole continent, whether it was people or forbidden places with ominous names, Qin Hao would never be afraid, let alone afraid. But in front of him, his spiritual power was really getting weaker and weaker. Even like the other contestants, it was as if two iron balls were tied to his legs, and it was difficult to move. What secrets are hidden in the demon's subduing pagoda? Even my emperor-level spiritual power can be restrained. Damn it. As he walked, Qin Hao clenched his fists. Sweat dripped down his back and stuck to his skin, and it was extremely uncomfortable. The pitch-black space on the 11th floor was very cold and gloomy, making one's hair stand on end. What was more frightening was that Qin Hao found that his body could no longer withstand the pressure in the pagoda. As his legs trembled, if there was light in the pagoda, he would see that his skin had cracked. Even if he couldn't see at the moment, he could feel it, because he had already smelled the faint smell of blood. This blood was his. The 12th floor, could the secret be on the 12th floor? Qin Hao gritted his teeth and circulated his alchemy power throughout his body. He used the indestructible samsara technique to resist the external pressure that was about to make his body collapse. Although he felt dizzy, his mind was unusually clear. This meant that Qin Hao's spiritual power was fine. Could it be that my physical body is too weak and can't keep up with my spiritual power? Qin Hao thought of the key point. In fact, all the way from the first floor, his spiritual power level was constantly changing according to the changes in the environment. The greater the external pressure, the higher the spiritual power level. When he stepped into the 11th floor, Qin Hao had already raised his spiritual power level to the 12th level. In essence, he didn't lie to Tian Buoguang. However, seeing that the entrance to the 12th floor was getting closer and closer, Qin Hao was about to raise his spiritual power to the 13th level. At this time, his body couldn't withstand the pressure and oozed blood. Thinking of this, Qin Hao was relieved. He blamed himself for being careless and ignoring this small problem. According to the strength of his saint-level physical body, the limit was probably the 13th level of spiritual power. If he really released all of his emperor level, it was very likely that he would self-destruct because of this. Cultivation is the foundation. In the future, if I want to use all of my spiritual power, I have to speed up the cultivation of the realm. He nodded and warned himself not to make such a mistake again. Fortunately, his spiritual power of the 12th level was enough to crush Tian Boguan. Otherwise, the consequences would be very serious. In addition, Qin Hao had another doubt. What on earth would be in the tower that was so powerful that it could interfere with the spiritual power of the 13th level? While talking, Qin Hao had touched the entrance to the 12th floor. As long as he stepped in, it was basically the same as walking through the entire demon-subduing pagoda. But at the same time, once he stepped in and encountered danger, Yilong Yuan won't hurt people, will he? Taking a deep breath, Qin Hao closed his eyes and then immediately opened them. His eyes flashed with fierce sharpness, as if he had found the Emperor's power in his previous life. Who am I? I am Dendi. No matter what kind of demons and ghosts you are, why should I be afraid of you? He took a big step and stepped in. Suddenly, a dazzling golden light came, as if he had walked into a golden palace. Qin Hao's eyes had no time to adjust, so he quickly covered his eyes with his hand. After a little rest, he gently released his hand. Chapter 446. Stepping onto the 12th floor was originally something to be excited about. However, Qin Hao frowned slightly and was not happy at all. The space on the 12th floor was very strange. There was no pressure at all inside, and it was no different from the world outside the tower. However, the seemingly calm hall was filled with an aura that made one's scalp tingle. This aura made Dendi, who had been reborn, Qin Hao, unable to help but tremble in the depths of his heart. Qin Hao asked himself, even when he was trapped in the God Burial Valley in his previous life, facing the siege of more than 10 Emperor-level experts, he did not frown, let alone feel this kind of fear. But now, what exactly is in the tower? It's in that direction. Sensing the abnormality, Qin Hao suddenly turned his head and looked at the north wall of the hall. This aura of fear was emitted from the north wall. If someone came in to take a look, they would find that this wall was actually nothing special. It was just a very ordinary wall. In Qin Hao's eyes, it changed its appearance. Almost as soon as his gaze shifted, an illusory door appeared on the wall in a trance, then slowly opened. The world behind this door was very blurry and could not be seen clearly. The scene in front of him was extremely strange, as if the hall on the 12th floor was a living creature. Could it be that the demon-subduing pagoda doesn't only have 12 floors, but there's also a 13th floor hidden in the 12th floor? Qin Hao's expression became very difficult. A 13th floor that could not be seen from the outside world but appeared in front of him, and it even opened a door to him. Qin Hao could almost conclude that other than him, no one knew that there was a 13th floor in the demon-subduing pagoda. Even Yilong Yuan himself did not know. Then at this moment, should he go in? Qin Hao was struggling in his heart. The aura coming from the door was quite evil, to be able to make Dendi's soul tremble. Just thinking about it was an extremely terrifying thing. However, this door seemed to have magic, summoning Qin Hao, making him want to go in and take a look. Qin Hao also had a feeling that if he did not go in, he would regret it for the rest of his life. For example, when he went to the God Burial Valley to find the Great Void Cauldron in his previous life, he also had the same feeling. Could it be? What kind of shocking treasure was hidden in the mysterious 13th floor? I don't care anymore. There's no place in the world that I don't dare to go. Qin Hao put his sleeves behind his back and walked towards a wall with his head held high. As soon as he came into contact with it, his body was immediately engulfed. Then, after Qin Hao walked in, the door on the wall disappeared again. The outside world. In Luo Shui Square, a sea of people stared unblinkingly at the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Just a moment ago, a dot of light flashed from the 10th floor to the 11th floor. In an instant, Luo Shui Square burst into an uproar. Someone has entered the 11th floor. He's simply a genius that's hard to come by in 10,000 years. It must be young Master Tian. Everyone nodded and praised him. Ha ha! Tian Shulin laughed heartily, laughing so hard that his back bent. The person who entered the 11th floor was undoubtedly his grandson. Only Tian Boguang, who had a rank 11 mentality, had such an ability. Apart from him, there was no other person in Western Liang. This was already very surprising. But immediately, the dot of light on the 11th floor quickly flashed to the 12th floor. Huff, huff! There was a heavy breathing sound in Luo Shui Square. No one dared to speak. They were all deeply shocked by the scene in front of them. The whole place was silent, so the heavy breathing was particularly loud. Even Tian Shulin, who was squatting on the ground, stopped laughing. He raised his head in shock and looked at the top of the pagoda. The 12th floor. That was the top floor. His grandson had actually reached the top of the Yao ceiling pagoda. What kind of strong willpower was this? What kind of shocking performance was this? Even Tian Shulin didn't dare to imagine that his grandson had such an ability. It was far beyond his expectations. You're indeed my grandson. I'm proud of you. The next second, Tian Shulin squatted on the ground and burst into tears without caring about his image. He was so excited that his face was full of snot. If he didn't vent it out, he would feel sorry for the world. He wanted to show the whole continent that his incomparably awesome grandson was the pride of his ancestors. But then, everyone saw that the dot of light that entered the 12th floor suddenly disappeared inexplicably. Everyone's heart twitched violently. What was going on? Could it be that he died in there? Then, another accident happened before their eyes. The moment the dot of light on the 12th floor disappeared, the top of the Yao ceiling pagoda spewed out a powerful light. The light was as bright as a luminous pearl shining at the top of the pagoda. It was incomparably dazzling. Damn! This. Everyone was so shocked that their souls left their bodies. The top of the 12th floor was the top of the pagoda. What did this mean? Could it be that there was a 13th floor inside the Yao ceiling pagoda, and Tian Boguang had entered the 13th floor? Immediately, someone fainted from fright. Tian Shulin was also in a daze. He didn't cry, make a fuss, or scream. He didn't even have the energy to show off. At this moment, he also had doubts. Was the dot of light that entered the 13th floor really his grandson, Tian Boguang? On the other hand, Yao Lao was even more nervous. In addition to staring at the top of the pagoda, his palms were also sweating profusely. Someone had actually reached the 13th floor of the Yao ceiling pagoda. It was unbelievable. Who was this person? After thinking about it, it was very likely to be Tian Boguang. Tian Boguang's spiritual grade was the highest among all the contestants. Only he had the chance to climb to the top of the pagoda. As for Qin Hao, Yao Lao had already given up hope. To be able to step into the 10th floor was definitely Qin Hao's limit. After all, there were 4 dots of light flickering on the 10th floor just now. Yao Lao firmly believed that Qin Hao was one of them. Then he saw that the other 3 dots of light gradually moved downward. This meant that 3 of them had failed and couldn't take another step forward. On the other hand, Tian Boguang climbed to the 11th floor in one breath and then to the 12th floor without stopping. He was really too fierce. Although he didn't want to admit it, in his heart, Yao Lao was quite jealous of Tian Shulin. He was jealous that this old guy had raised a good grandson. There was a lot of discussion in the Luo Shui Square for a long time. Everyone was shocked by the light shining from the top of the pagoda. At the same time, in another place, someone was even more shocked than them. The Imperial Palace. In the Imperial Study, a middle-aged man was sitting steadily on a noble and spacious dragon chair. He leaned lazily against the back of the dragon chair with his eyes closed as if he was sleeping. This middle-aged man was very handsome. It was estimated that when he was young, he had hooked up with many beautiful girls. At first glance, he gave off a very easygoing and amiable feeling. However, there was also an invisible aura of majesty emanating from between his brows. It was also this majesty that made people not dare to act rashly in front of him. Moreover, judging from the outline of his face, the similarity between him and Yi Shuihan was as high as 80%. If he were to walk out of the gate of the Imperial Palace and stand on the bustling street and shout, "I am Yi Shuihan's biological father," no one would doubt it, because they looked so similar. However, Yi Shuihan's face was more youthful, and this middle-aged man was more profound and more intimidating. He was the emperor of the Luo Shui Empire, Yilong Yuan. My lord, the demon-subduing pagoda has been going on for more than 2 hours. Do you think it's time to end it? Also, can you tell me who the little guy who entered the 12th floor is? At this moment, a voice asked softly from beside him. It sounded very careful. Chapter 447. While asking in a low voice, Old Man Huang glanced at the towering demon-subduing pagoda through the window of the imperial study from time to time. The demon-subduing pagoda was as majestic as a mountain. Even through the palace walls, Old Man Huang could still clearly see the floating light spots on the 6th floor. Just now, 4 light spots had entered the 10th floor, but now, 3 of them began to move down. Only 1 light spot broke the limit and reached the 11th floor of the demon-subduing pagoda. And it broke the limit again and reached the 12th floor. Old Man Huang was Yilong Yuan's confidant, but he didn't have the ability to go through the obstacles set up by the other party to check the situation inside. So he didn't know who broke the limit and stepped into the 12th floor. But this didn't stop him from being excited. A 12th level spiritual power super genius had appeared in front of him. It was really the Luo Shui Empire's blessing. In this regard, Yilong Yuan didn't say anything. He was still lying lazily with his eyes closed. If he didn't see that he was still breathing, Old Man Huang would even think that the Dragon Abyss Emperor had died. Not bad, not bad. A very strange kid. It seems that he can control his spiritual grade at will. Until now, he has completely revealed his true colors. Yilong Yuan, who was lying on the dragon throne, licked his lips. A trace of admiration flashed across his smiling face. As the owner of the demon-subduing pagoda, he was naturally clear about the situation inside. In fact, other than him, no one knew anything about the situation inside. Even Yao Lao and Tian Shulin didn't have that ability. He remembered very clearly that the moment the demon-subduing pagoda opened, Yao Lao and Tian Shulin released their supreme-level thoughts to secretly spy on the situation inside. Unfortunately, in front of the Dragon Abyss Emperor, supreme-level powerhouses weren't qualified at all. Those 2 thoughts couldn't penetrate his Emperor-level barrier. However, the strange kid that Yilong Yuan was talking about was naturally Qin Hao. In fact, he knew the relationship between Qin Hao and Yishui Han, so he paid special attention to Qin Hao all the way to the pagoda. Qin Hao's casual promotion of his spirit level in the tower did not escape Yilong Yuan's eyes at all. Qin Hao, this brat, is a great talent. He actually managed to reach the 12th floor, as expected of my son's brother. In the end, my son is still the best. A satisfied smile appeared on Yilong Yuan's face as he praised Yishui Han in his heart. Unfortunately, the son he spoke of didn't even manage to step into the 1st level of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Suddenly, Yilong Yuan, who was lying on the dragon throne, frowned. His handsome face was squeezed together like dough as he shouted, "Impossible!" Whoosh! His tightly shut eyes suddenly opened and his pupils dilated. His eyes were filled with disbelief and a trace of panic. He could sense that Qin Hao's aura had vanished from the 12th floor of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. Under Yilong Yuan's powerful divine sense, Qin Hao seemed to have evaporated into thin air and disappeared from the 12th floor. His ancestors must have seen ghosts. "Master, what happened?" Old Man Huang hurriedly asked. At this time, Yilong Yuan had lost his composure. He had never seen his master with such an unbearable side. In his impression, only Lady Yu, Yishuan's biological mother, showed such panic when she broke up with Emperor Long Yuan back then. 20 years had already passed. Today, Old Man Huang once again saw Yilong Yuan's panic side. It was truly nostalgic. Speaking of which, back then, the Dragon Abyss Emperor cried his heart out. That was incomparably miserable. However, Yilong Yuan wasn't as relaxed as Old Man Huang. Qin Hao suddenly disappeared from the Yao Ceiling Pagoda, and he couldn't feel any trace of his aura at all. This situation explained 2 things. First, Qin Hao was dead. Second, Qin Hao was snatched away from the void right in front of his eyes. The possibility of a second was almost 0. Yilong Yuan's strength was that of a 6-star primitive emperor. Otherwise, no one would be able to divert Qin Hao from his sight. Even if it was Emperor Yuan, he would definitely be the kind of 9-star primitive emperor whose strength had reached the peak. Then, there was only the first result. Qin Hao was dead. Strangely, Yilong Yuan didn't find Qin Hao's body on the 12th floor. Really, this is so strange. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became. He was so anxious that his head was sweating. It didn't matter that Qin Hao disappeared, but he couldn't explain it to his son, Yi Shuihan. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda was created by Yilong Yuan. Damn it, there was a rumbling sound. Yilong Yuan jumped up, grabbed the dragon table in front of him with both hands, and directly turned it upside down. The tea on the table splashed all over Old Man Huang's body. The tea was just served by Old Man Huang. Emperor Long Yuan had a hobby. He liked to drink boiling water, which was even hotter than Tian Bu Wang's soul fire. Old Man Huang couldn't react in time and was splashed on his body. He also covered his face in pain and let out a heart-wrenching howl. Impossible! How could such a ridiculous thing happen? How can I explain it to Yi Shuihan? Yilong Yuan seemed to be dumbfounded. His face was full of panic, and he didn't see Old Man Huang rolling on the ground in pain. Master, what's going on? Oh my God! Please save this old servant. Old Man Huang pulled Yilong Yuan's pants and asked for help. The reason why Yilong Yuan liked to drink boiled water was that he cultivated the supreme water technique. Moreover, it was the kind of water technique that was extremely ian and cold. Only Yilong Yuan could alleviate Old Man Huang's pain at this moment. Disappeared into thin air. What should I do? What should I do? Yilong Yuan finally reacted. There was still a living person in the imperial study. As if he had grabbed a life-saving straw, he also bent down and grabbed Old Man Huang's arm and asked, my dear, why is your face blistered? Are you heaty? Water, ice. My lord. Old Man Huang couldn't take it anymore. Put it in your mouth. Yilong Yuan took in the prenatal qi in his palm and gently clenched his fist. Instantly, water vapor filled the room. Squeak! A gust of cold air came out of his palm, and a popsicle appeared. Regardless of whether Old Man Huang was willing or not, he directly stuffed it into his mouth. Suddenly, Old Man Huang's body felt cold. Well, it was so comfortable. My lord, what exactly happened? Why are you so panicked? Old Man Huang suppressed the pain and asked for the third time. Slap! Yilong Yuan slapped himself in the face. Disappeared. Qin Hao disappeared from the 12th floor. I can't find him if he's alive, and I can't find his corpse if he's dead. Hiss! Old Man Huang couldn't help but gasp. The light spot that stepped onto the 12th floor was indeed Qin Hao. At that moment, Old Man Huang's face was full of pride. After all, he was an elder of Qian University. Qin Hao really made him proud. It was a loud bang. Yilong Yuan kicked him in the chest and said angrily, Qin Hao disappeared in the demon-subduing pagoda, and you're still in the mood to be happy here? How could it be? Old Man Huang came to his senses and was very surprised. Isn't the demon-subduing pagoda your magic treasure? Can Qin Hao grow wings and fly away? The demon-subduing pagoda is mine, but I still don't have enough ability to control it. Speaking of this, Yilong Yuan fell back on the dragon throne with a dispirited face. Chapter 448. He looked at Yilong Yuan in disbelief. He even thought that Yilong Yuan was joking. As the owner of the demon-subduing pagoda, he didn't have enough ability to control it. The demon-subduing pagoda was just a sage-to-be artifact, but Yilong Yuan was a 6-star origin emperor. This pagoda, Old Man Huang subconsciously looked out of the palace and looked at the huge pagoda, as if he wanted to say something but stopped. Yilong Yuan knew what he wanted to ask and said lightly, I got this thing by chance when I was traveling. Leaning against the dragon throne, Yilong Yuan narrowed his eyes again. A trace of memory surged into his mind, and he slowly spoke. More than 10 years ago, he and his friends went to the forbidden area of Western Liang, the abandoned capital. The abandoned capital was in ruins. 2,000 years ago, it was a ruined empire in Western Liang, the capital of the Qing dynasty. Now, the powerful Qing dynasty had long been reduced to ashes becoming a tiny speck of dust in the long river of history. In the abandoned capital, they found an ancient tomb, so they went in to explore excitedly. Only later did Yulong Yuan know that the ancient tomb was the tomb of the last prince of the Qing dynasty, the Emperor Yongshou. He was shocked. This was the tomb of an emperor. Moreover, Prince Yongshou was a famous person. He was ranked second among the princes at that time, and people called him the second master. When he was alive, Prince Yongshou was even more dissolute than Yulong Yuan. He was even more rampant than a perverted thief. Even though he had been dead for 2,000 years, people still sang praises of his glorious deeds. Once a little girl was disobedient, the family would scare her and say, "When you grow up, send you to the abandoned capital and let the ghost of Prince Yongshou marry you." In an instant, the disobedient little girl immediately became an obedient girl. Could it be that you found the demon subduing pagoda in Prince Yongshou's coffin? Old man Huang asked impatiently. Yes. Yulong Yuan nodded. Prince Yongshou was very smart. Before he died, he built hundreds of large tombs, but in the end, he buried himself in the tomb of a big sect leader at that time. Speaking of this, Yulong Yuan seemed to be interested and thought that he could imitate Prince Yongshou. When the day comes that he dies, I want to live a long life and watch Shui Han ascend the throne and inherit my family property. This demon subduing pagoda was indeed found in his coffin. However, there were no remains in the coffin, not even a single bone. Yulong Yuan spread out his hands and could not help but want to curse. The coffin was empty. He wanted to see what Crown Prince Yongshou looked like, even if it was just a skull. In the end, there was nothing but the Yao ceiling pagoda. Crown Prince Yongshou was really miserable. He didn't even find it embarrassing that he didn't even have a decent burial item. Yulong Yuan left with the demon subduing pagoda. When he left, he even kicked the coffin lid. It was only later that he found out that the tomb was indeed where Crown Prince Yongshou was buried. He took the Yao ceiling pagoda back to Luo Shui and studied it in private for a long time. He discovered that it was a quasi-sane artifact, the worst of the holy artifacts. If this thing had not been found in Crown Prince Yongshou's coffin, and Yulong Yuan wanted to keep it as a souvenir, he would have thrown away long ago. After studying it, he discovered that this quasi-saint artifact could transform and measure a person's spiritual power grade. Other than that, it had no other use. It was not even as powerful as Dan Ji's Earth Overturning Seal. For Yulong Yuan, and primitive emperor powerhouse, it had no value at all. It just so happened that Qin Hao and Tian Bu Wang were competing in spiritual power today, so he took it out of play. However, he never thought that it would make Qin Hao disappear. According to what you said, there is nothing special about the Yao ceiling pagoda. Why can't the Lord control it? Old man Huang looked at him curiously. This pagoda is not as simple as it looks on the surface. Speaking of the main topic, Yulong Yuan's expression was very solemn. Although the level of the Yao ceiling pagoda was very poor, well, it was very poor in the eyes of the primitive emperors. However, there was a very strange power faintly existing in the pagoda. Even Yulong Yuan, a 6-star primitive emperor, could not tame that power. Therefore, he was still unable to use the Yao ceiling pagoda freely. However, Yulong Yuan did not take it to heart. It was just a quasi-sane artifact. It was not a big deal. The treasures in his spatial ring were much higher grade than the Yao ceiling pagoda. However, at this critical juncture today, something happened to Qin Hao in the pagoda. He disappeared for no reason. This old man Huang was startled. Could it be that you can't sense Qin Hao's aura at all? He disappeared from the face of the earth. There is no way to find him. Yulong Yuan muttered irresponsibly. He had the will, but not the strength. He could not find him even if he wanted to. Aya, what should we do? Old man Huang was anxious as soon as he heard that. He clenched his right hand into a fist and kept knocking on the palm of his left hand. He even walked back and forth anxiously in front of Yulong Yuan, shaking his head as he walked. Qin Hao had saved Yi Shuhin's life several times. The two had already established a friendship of life and death. Now that he had disappeared for no reason, he could not explain it to the young master. However, at this moment, a bright light shone from outside the imperial study. Yilong Yuan opened his closed eyes again and glared at him. Looking at the golden light shining like a luminous pearl at the top of the pagoda, Yilong Yuan was extremely shocked. Moreover, an unprecedented aura of fear was clearly transmitted to him. He would never mistake this aura. It was the demonic aura in the Yao Ceiling Pagoda. For a long time, even Yilong Yuan could not tame the demonic aura. Could it be that Qin Hao had touched something forbidden in the pagoda? Oh no! The next moment, Yilong Yuan made a gesture with his hands, and his majestic mind shrouded the Yao Ceiling Pagoda again. He had to find out the truth. He said silently in his heart, Qin Hao, don't be in trouble. Otherwise, the Luo Shui Empire will be turned upside down by Yi Shui Han. At the same time, Qin Hao was unaware of the shock of the people outside and Yilong Yuan's anxiety. When he walked into the 13th floor of the pagoda, he was immediately surprised by the scene in front of him. This floor was completely different from the other floors. The space was very narrow, like a small room. In the dim room, there was a small, old table with an oil lamp on it. After countless years, the oil lamp was still lit. The orange flames swayed slowly on the wick, and the room was filled with the quaint smell of dust. It was as if someone lived here and waited for an old friend to visit. Obviously, this oil lamp was not simple. According to his intuition, it had been burning for thousands of years, and the oil was definitely not ordinary. Before Qin Hao had time to be surprised, his eyes fell on something next to the oil lamp. In an instant, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. The demon purification pot. He couldn't help but shout. Qin Hao's heartbeat suddenly accelerated, and his chest seemed to be hit hard by a hammer. On the table, there was a treasure, the demon purification pot, which was very rare and precious even in the East Continent. At this moment, Qin Hao was very alert and even subconsciously took a few steps back. He knew very well that only the great demons in the world that were extremely difficult to be refined, or even impossible to be refined, will be put into the demon purification pot by means of the strong. However, this was just a means of sealing, and it could not destroy the demons at all. Chapter 449. In his previous life, Qin Hao had rarely met a worthy opponent, so he had never tried to seal a powerful demon. However, he heard from an emperor-level senior that he had once fought with an unforgivable demon emperor. In the end, he was no match for the demon emperor. Out of desperation, he used the alchemy flask and sacrificed his own lifespan to seal the demon emperor. How could Qin Hao not be shocked when a medicine refining pot appeared in front of him? Moreover, the evil aura that permeated the demon subduing pagoda came from this medicine refining pot. At this moment, it was summoning Qin Hao. There seemed to be a voice encouraging him. Open it. Open it. You will be invincible and stand at the peak of the continent. The world will fall into your hands. The voice was so tempting that Qin Hao couldn't help but take a step forward. Open it. Can I take back everything that belongs to me? Open it, save Master, and find Xiao Han. Open it, return to the East Continent, kill the rebels, and make Han Lingxian and Zhang Wu pay the price. Open it, and return to the throne of Daqin. It seemed that as long as he opened the medicine refining pot, Qin Hao would immediately regain his peak strength. At this moment, Qin Hao clenched his fists. His heart was restless. However, his rationality told him that he must not open it. With his current strength, he was definitely no match for the demon. Once the demon in the pot saw the light of day again, it would definitely become a disaster for the land of Western Liang, or even the entire continent. Qin Hao's heart was struggling. I will take back what I have lost. No one can run away from what they owe me. I don't need anyone's power. I am Dendi. Qin Hao clenched his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. He abruptly turned his head and strode outside. He couldn't be bewitched by the demon. However, he had only taken 2 steps when he stopped and looked back at the medicine refining pot. It wasn't easy to come to the 13th floor. Was he going to leave empty-handed? This wasn't Qin Hao's style. At least the oil lamp was good. The oil lamp was definitely good stuff. Yes, take it. Qin Hao turned around and prepared to take away the only thing that could be considered valuable in this small house. Just as he reached out his hand, "You useless little bastard, you'd rather take a broken lamp than take the old man with you. F***CK, your ancestors." A furious roar echoed out from within the alchemy pot. At this moment, the medicine refining pot was like a living person anxiously jumping around on the table. One could totally imagine how uncomfortable the fellow who was sealed inside was feeling. F***CK, he spoke. Qin Hao was shocked and immediately withdrew his hand. The old man is not a demon, but a human. He is a good citizen, but he was put into this small bottle by a bad guy who kidnapped and sold women. Hurry up and let me out. I will repay you well. I will take you to drink, eat meat, and visit the brothel. The voice said hurriedly. In response, Qin Hao rolled his eyes and said indifferently, "Are you trying to trick a 3-year-old child?" F***CK. This time it was the voice that was shocked. The young man in front of him was not bad. Not only could he resist the temptation in his heart, but he was also so calm. Why was he not afraid at all? If it were an ordinary person, he would be crying and calling for his father. In fact, who was Qin Hao? Dindi of Daqin was reborn. What had he not seen before? Cough, cough. Young man, the old man did not lie to you. I am really a good person. The voice continued unwillingly. A good person? Qin Hao could not help but find it funny. A good person is put into the medicine refining pot. Save it. I have something to do at home. Let's talk next time. Worried about the safety of Daqin Prefecture, Qin Hao hurriedly went to get the oil lamp again. Boo-hoo. God, you're trying to kill me. Pity me, a great emperor of a generation, but I have been schemed against by a villain. I can't live even if I want to. I will be trapped in this small bottle for the rest of my life. The old man has no place to use his abilities. Since the hard way did not work, the voice decided to use a soft way and started to cry. Qin Hao could not help but feel a jolt in his heart. A great emperor of a generation? Schemed against by a villain? Could it be, was he really not a demon? Qin Hao hesitated. This guy who was put into a bottle was too similar to Qin Hao's. They were both great emperors, but they were also schemed against by villains. The sad thing was that this brother in front of him was even more miserable than Qin Hao. Qin Hao could be reborn with the help of a divine artifact, but this person was trapped in a small bottle for the rest of his life and would never see the sun. Who exactly are you? The designation of the empire? Qin Hao asked with a solemn expression. Perhaps he sympathized with the other party, but more so with himself. If the guy in the demon purification pot was really not a demon, Qin Hao could let him out. The premise was that he had to tell him who he was. As long as he said who he was, Qin Hao could judge whether he was real or fake. He did not live for 600 years in vain. My name is Yong Shou, the crown prince of the Qing dynasty in Shiliang. The voice hurriedly replied with a pitiful look. Yong Shou? Qin Hao's heart skipped a beat. 2,000 years ago, the last crown prince of the Qing dynasty in Shiliang. What? You know me? The voice was surprised. Nonsense. Who doesn't know the number 1 pervert on the continent, Crown Prince Yong Shou? Speaking of which, you are too useless. You were actually put into a bottle. Qin Hao shook his head. He didn't know this person. He thought that the Qing dynasty was destroyed because of the death of Crown Prince Yong Shou. He did not expect that he was schemed against by others. I was deceived by a villain. Speaking of which, how is my Qing dynasty? The voice sighed and asked. Me? Qin Hao felt very unnatural when he heard that. This was the first time someone had called himself me in front of him. Even those great emperors in his previous life would take the initiative to lower their status and call themselves me when they met Qin Hao. All right, this Crown Prince Yong Shou was an old senior. Qin Hao did not blame him. Moreover, he did not know that Qin Hao was Dinda's rebirth. Well, I'm sorry, your Qing dynasty is finished. 2,000 years have passed. Qin Hao rubbed his nose and said, What did you say? My Qing dynasty is finished? The voice let out a shocking cry. It was incomparably shocked. Then it fell silent. He smiled bitterly and said, I actually guessed it. After losing me, the wise crown prince, how could the Qing dynasty not be finished? TSK. Qin Hao snorted and thought to himself, "It's a blessing for the Qing dynasty if you die. Who isn't afraid of sex fiends? Young man, can you gently open the bottle and invite the old man, invite me out? I will reward you well. Even if I am not the emperor now, my cultivation is still there. You have reached the sage level at such a young age. It is indeed very good. However, I have a way to promote you. You could become a Yuan venerate, or even a Yuan emperor." The voice said gently, "Yes, but you have to promise me." "Forget it. Your promise is equivalent to fart." Qin Hao picked up the medicine refining pot and looked at it seriously. After figuring out the identity of the other party, he was no longer so frightened. As for the consequences of letting Yong show out, that was already beyond the scope of Qin Hao's ability. However, it did not mean that Qin Hao really could not deal with him. At most, he would use the red lotus fire to perish together. Nodding his head, Qin Hao pulled out the stopper of the medicine refining pot. A scarlet gas immediately rushed out from inside. In the outside world, it seemed that the world had darkened and thunder rolled through the clouds. Ahaha! After 2,000 years, this sex fiend is finally out. Crown Prince Yongshou, you never expected this, right? I want the descendants of the Qing dynasty to pay the price and massacre your entire clan. An evil roar sounded in the room. Not good. Qin Hao's expression changed drastically. It turned out that the guy trapped in the medicine refining pot was not Crown Prince Yongshou at all, but his enemy. Then how did Crown Prince Yongshou die? Chapter 450. He might have been killed by the old demon in the bottle. The aura of the scarlet gas that came out was extremely powerful, so powerful that even Qin Hao's emperor-level spiritual power was greatly threatened. This feeling couldn't be wrong. The other party was a real Emperor Yuan, and it wasn't a mediocre Emperor Yuan. Even with Qin Hao's cultivation in his previous life, it would be extremely difficult to defeat it. At this moment, Qin Hao opened his interspatial ring without hesitation and released the red lotus fire at any time. Once the old demon attacked, they would all die together. A surprise sound came from the scarlet gas. The young man in front of him wasn't bad, he was still so calm. "Forget it, I wanted to scare you, but it's not fun at all. Don't worry, I'm not Crown Prince Yongshou, nor am I his enemy." "Then who exactly are you?" This time, it was Qin Hao's turn to be surprised. He felt more and more confused. "I am a Blood Emperor. I am omnipotent, capable of toppling mountains and overturning seas," the scarlet gas said arrogantly. Qin Hao frowned. "Blood Emperor? What's the Blood Emperor?" He had no impression of it. "Young man, according to what you said just now, Emperor Yongshou of the Great Qing dynasty has died for 2,000 years. Then, I, the old demon, have a lifespan of 3,500 years now," the scarlet gas said. Then, it began to introduce itself. He was older than Crown Prince Yongshou. When Crown Prince Yongshou was still alive, this old thing had already lived for 1,500 years. Immediately, Qin Hao was surprised again. With the limit of the human body, even if one reached the cultivation level of Emperor Yuan, they would only have a lifespan of 1,300 years at most, unless one stepped into the God realm. Otherwise, once the limit was reached, one's divine soul would be destroyed. The old demon in front of him actually lived longer than other emperor-level powerhouses. In fact, this was the old demon's sorrow. At that time, he had just advanced to the emperor level not long ago. After working hard for a lifetime to complete his cultivation, he was about to die. He was unwilling to accept it. He used a secret technique to protect his divine consciousness and then accidentally met Crown Prince Yongshou. At that time, the Great Qing dynasty was in power. It was facing internal and external troubles. It was at the moment of collapse. The old demon lied to Crown Prince Yongshou that he could help him advance to the Emperor Yuan realm and revive the Great Qing dynasty. The price was that the two of them had to fuse. Both of their souls, Crown Prince Yongshou's body. In reality, how could there be such a good thing? If Qin Hao's guess was correct, the old monster definitely wanted to seize the opportunity to seize Yongshou's body. In fact, the old demon had really done so. Unfortunately, That pervert crown Prince Yongshou's spiritual grade was too low, and his cultivation was too weak. His body had long been hollowed out, and he was far from being able to withstand the old demon's powerful spiritual power, which directly led to Yongshou's premature death. Although the old monster had taken control of the other party's body, he was not satisfied. Therefore, the old monster gave up and chose to continue sleeping. He sealed his soul into the medicine refining pot. This was the only way for him to survive and prevent his soul from drifting away and being worn down by time. Then, he waited for the next opportunity to possess the body. This time, he had to choose a qualified person with extremely high spiritual power. In order to avoid a second tragedy like Crown Prince Yongshou, the old demon tried his best to deceive a powerful sect leader of the Great Qing dynasty and hid the medicine pot in the demon-subduing pagoda. This demon-subduing pagoda had no other use, but it was quite amazing when it came to measuring spiritual power. Everything happened naturally. Coincidentally, Yilong Yuan picked up the demon-subduing pagoda. Coincidentally, he brought the demon-subduing pagoda back to the Luoshui Empire and used it in this competition. Qin Hao, on the other hand, was coincidentally competing with Tian Boguang in spiritual power. Along the way, his performance had already been thoroughly studied by the old monster. He found that this young man's spiritual power was very high, and he could increase it at any time. Moreover, his spiritual power seemed to be endless. He was simply a talent sent by the heavens. So, now you understand, right? After speaking, the scarlet gas floating in the room made a greedy sound. It stood in front of Qin Hao like a hungry wolf drooling. I understand. You've taken a fancy to my body, Qin Hao said with an expressionless face. Because his spiritual power was high enough, his physical strength was definitely able to withstand the old demon soul. The old demon wanted to borrow his body to be reborn. But are you really confident that you can annihilate my soul and seize my body? Qin Hao sneered and looked at him with contempt. Nonsense. Who am I? I am the Blood Emperor, the strongest man in the divine wilderness continent. Crushing your soul would be as easy as crushing an ant. But don't worry, I won't be so heartless. Since you sent me a suitable body, I'll be merciful. After I succeed in seizing your body, I'll take your spirit. Once I succeed in seizing your soul, I'll put your soul in a bottle and seal it in the demon-subduing pagoda. This is my gift to you. Ha! The old monster let out a wild laugh. As he laughed, he cried, Do you know how painful it is to be put in a bottle? It's been 2,000 years, and there's no one to talk to my ancestors. The surroundings are pitch black. It's more terrifying than hell. I'm like a dog locked in the demon-subduing pagoda. Loneliness, and the feeling of being unable to see the light of day is constantly devouring me. I can't walk, can't run, and have no freedom. Do you know how miserable it is? Oh, I'm sorry. It doesn't matter if you don't know, because you'll experience it for yourself soon. Yes, I will make you beg for death. As he spoke, the old demon said ruthlessly. He couldn't wait any longer. The scarlet gas crazily drilled into Qin Hao's body. He had waited for this moment for 2,000 years. He couldn't miss it. He couldn't be chained in the medicine refining flask like a dog. No, staying in the medicine refining flask was worse than being a dog. At least a chained dog would have its owner feeding it. But once it was sealed in the medicine refining flask, it would never see the light of day again. It was a buzz. Qin Hao felt his mind shake violently. The old demon had already invaded his body. But in the next second, old Yao's scream sounded, mixed with incomparable fear, because he discovered that the soul in his body was extremely powerful. He couldn't move it at all, and this body didn't seem to be the original one. It had already been possessed once. At this moment, a smile slowly appeared at the corner of Qin Hao's mouth. He smiled faintly. Is Emperor Yuan so great? I'm also Emperor Yuan. So what if you have the soul of an emperor-level emperor? I'm also a F***king reincarnated emperor. Get out of here. Clenching his fists, Qin Hao raised his head and let out a shout. There was a bang. The scarlet gas was forcefully forced out of his body. At the same time, Qin Hao staggered and lost his balance. He knelt on one knee on the ground. His whole body was soaked with blood, flowing down the corners of his clothes. Under his clothes, his body was covered with cobwebs, and his skin cracked. In the short moment when he forced the other party out, Qin Hao completely unleashed Dinda's soul, causing his body to be unable to withstand it. This. How did this happen? The old demon was dumbfounded. Chapter 451. You shameless scum. Which mountain are you from? You stole the body that this old pervert had taken a fancy to. The old demon roared furiously. Even an idiot could tell that Qin Hao's soul did not belong to his original body. The explosive power just now was even stronger than the soul of the 1,000-year-old old demon. The old demon wanted to punch a hole in the sky. In order to protect his soul, he was willing to seal himself in a Lianyao flask and wait for thousands of years. What about Qin Hao? He actually took a shortcut. He directly took over Qin Hao's body. The old monster could not figure out what to do. In fact, although he and Qin Hao were both reborn, their natures were completely different. The old demon took one step at a time and waited for a qualified person. He had waited for thousands of years. Qin Hao was reborn with the help of a divine weapon, and it was not considered a possession. When he was reborn, young Master Qin was already dead. This is called first come, first served. Qin Hao stood up after wiping the blood from his mouth. Although he was very weak, he was not afraid of his opponent at all. Instead, his face was full of confidence. Damn it, I don't believe I can't beat you, old demon. The scarlet ball of gas roared. He could tell that Qin Hao had reached his limit and could not release all of his soul power. If he did it again, his body would definitely collapse, and he would die. Hee, do you know what I'm most powerful about as the Blood Emperor? Nibbling. Whoosh! A thin red light separated from the scarlet ball of gas and flashed again, entering Qin Hao's body. This wisp of my soul has entered your veins. With how weak you are now, you won't be able to chase me out. As for me, I will wear you down bit by bit and devour you. When my power fills all of your veins, you can only be controlled by me like a puppet. This move of mine is called soul devouring. Technique, haha! The old demon laughed again. Even if he couldn't take over Qin Hao's body immediately, he had enough time to wait. He had waited for thousands of years, and he was not in a hurry to wait a day or two. As long as his power remained in Qin Hao's body, Qin Hao would become weaker and weaker until his soul was completely devoured. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid you don't have that ability. Qin Hao gathered his yuan qi, and his body emitted an orange glow. As he circulated his yuan qi, he suppressed the old demon's spirit clone that had entered his body. Furthermore, he used his own spiritual strength to imprison it. You want to control me? I want to control you. Qin Hao said, Qin Hao, how is this possible? The old demon shrieked in fear. Qin Hao was already very weak, yet he was still able to suppress him. Nothing is impossible. It's true that my soul is weakening, but haven't you noticed that your soul is also rapidly transforming? The corners of Qin Hao's mouth curled up into a smile as he pointed to the scarlet mass in front of him. At this moment, the aura of this scarlet mass had unknowingly dropped from the Yuan the Arch level to the Yuan Sovereign level. It probably wouldn't be long before it dropped to the Yuan Venerate level, or even below the Sage level. At that time, the old demon would no longer be able to stir up trouble. It would be a piece of cake for Qin how to counter the other party. It was even possible to devour him. The old demon was speechless. Then, he let out an earth-shattering cry. When did his soul power transform? Why did it transform? As a soul body, you are rejected by the heavenly Tao and have been relying on the alchemy pot to survive until today. Once you come out for too long, your soul will quickly weaken and eventually turn into a wisp of green smoke and disappear between heaven and earth. Qin Hao said calmly with a helpless tone. Even the powerful Emperor Yuan couldn't escape the cycle of life and death. This was the cycle of the heavenly Tao. That was why so many people wanted to become gods. Only by breaking through to the celestial level could one break through the heavenly tribulation. Now, I will give you two choices. First, follow me. I will use my blood essence to protect your soul from being destroyed. Then, I will help you find a suitable person for you to possess again. Second, turn into a wisp of smoke, and there will no longer be a blood emperor in this world. Qin Hao gave the other party two options. A way to live, a dead end. What's the price? The old demon wasn't stupid. As a demon that had lived for 3,000 years, he knew that Qin Hao wasn't so kind as to help him. Price? Be my slave. Qin Hao's tone was firm and unquestionable. Impossible. The old demon immediately became anxious and wanted to tear the sky apart. Asking him, the dignified blood emperor, a senior that had lived for 3,000 years, to be a slave to a brat? Even Prince Yong-shou wasn't qualified. He even despised Prince Yong-shou for being a slave to the old demon. Think about it. I will give you 3 breaths of time. Actually, I don't need to do this at all. I can just devour you right now. Qin Hao's eyes flashed sharply. The majestic soul magnetic field in his body once again pressed down on the old demon's avatar. Immediately, the scarlet mass in front of him let out a painful scream. Qin Hao was right. At this moment, the strand of consciousness that the old demon had separated was quickly weakening. It was so weak that he almost couldn't feel it. I agree. I agree. He was so scared that he immediately agreed. He comforted himself in his heart. Being a slave was pretty good. It was better than being a dead person. Speaking of which, I really haven't lived enough. I don't want to leave this beautiful world. Speaking of which, can we still discuss it? Even if he had to sell his body, the old demon wanted to sell it for a good price. No. There's no room for discussion. You can only be a slave. Qin Hao didn't change his mind. I admit defeat. How about this? Give me back my avatar, and we will sign a contract immediately. I will be your master, and you will be my servant. No. Your master, and I will be your servant. What a joke. Qin Hao sneered. I still want to rely on that avatar to control you. You want me to release a tiger back into the mountains after you have fallen into my hands? You think too much. You little be asterisk starred. The old demon cursed. His evil scheme had not succeeded. How can you talk to me like that? Qin Hao's face stiffened. Then, his soul once again bombarded the old demon's avatar. Roar, the old demon howled. He didn't lower his stance. I have lived for 3,000 years and schemed against this and that. In the end, I have lost my life. I admit defeat. Disheartened, he immediately signed a master-servant contract with Qin Hao. In fact, if he didn't sign the contract, the old demon would dissipate very quickly. His strength had already regressed from a Yuan Venerate to a low-level Yuan Monarch. He couldn't hesitate any longer. The contract used their souls as a medium. If it was violated, their souls would be burned to ashes. Qin Hao was the master and could know what the old demon was thinking at any time. He had the power to decide the old demon's life and death. The old demon was a servant. In the future, he could only suck up to Qin Hao and fawn over him. If he didn't satisfy the other party, he would inevitably suffer. The contract is now in effect. Every month, I will separate a drop of essence blood from your heart to maintain the current state of your spirit and slow down the speed of your weakening. In addition, I will help you find a qualified person as soon as possible. The medicine refining flask is useless to you now. Come to my spatial ring. Qin Hao stretched out his hand. Sigh. The old demon sighed helplessly in the room. This scarlet gas floated around the 13th level for a while before turning into smoke and entering Qin Hao's spatial ring. Chapter 452. As soon as he entered the spatial ring, the old demon was shocked. There were quite a lot of things stored here. There were thousands of pills, sumeru pouches piled up into mountains, and piles of shiny weapons. The little master was a nouveau riche. If these things were made public, they would definitely attract a lot of people to fight over them. However, in the old demon's eyes, they were just a pile of scrap metal. However, He could faintly guess Qin Hao's habits. The little master had a hobby of collecting treasures. The old demon silently remembered this in his heart. However, in the next second, he was not just surprised but shocked. Beside the pills and weapons lay a dog. Its fur was thick, and its body was like a giant lion. As soon as it saw old Yao, it kept barking fiercely at him. Dog spirit. The old demon subconsciously cried out in surprise. Brother dog, stop barking. We're all on the same side. You two will be colleagues in the future, so you should get along well. Qin Hao's chuckling voice sounded. The dog spirit barked twice, then quietly lay back down. However, its malicious eyes were still fixed on the scarlet ball of gas that the old demon had transformed into. In that instant, the ball of gas clearly trembled. If the old demon had a body, he would definitely cover his crotch with both hands. Brother, from now on, we'll mind our own business, the old demon warned. Then, he slowly floated forward. He saw a flame in front of him. The aura it emitted was extremely domineering, causing the old demon, who was the Blood Emperor, to feel his heart palpitate. Filled with curiosity, he decided to find out what was going on. That ball of flame was Qin Hao's red lotus fire. Therefore, as expected, before the old demon could even get close, he immediately turned around and ran away with a shrill howl. What kind of strange flame is this? Could it be the legendary red lotus? Little master, save me. His ghostly wails and howls could be clearly heard. In the outside world, Qin Hao rolled his eyes. Was the old demon mentally ill? In order to obtain eternal life and a body, he put himself into the medicine refining flask, and now he recklessly touched the red lotus fire. The red lotus fire was one of the most ferocious deviant flames in the world. It was especially deadly to the old demon's soul. Are you tired of living? Stay here obediently and don't mess around in there. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences. Qin Hao scolded. He forced out a drop of blood essence from his index finger and dripped it onto the ring. The blood essence seeped into the ring and was absorbed by the old demon. He was a soul body, and only by feeding Qin Hao's blood essence could his soul not be destroyed. After the absorption, the ring suddenly quieted down. However, the old demon's current state of mind could no longer be described as shock. Instead, it had transformed into fear. What kind of master did he recognize? He actually possessed the world's most ferocious red lotus fire. The old demon was completely convinced. He originally wanted to wait until he was familiar with Qin Hao before changing the contract to an equal contract. Perhaps he could escape from Qin Hao's control in the future. However, the red lotus fire in front of him made him understand that Qin Hao was an extremely terrifying person. Bargaining with him? No way. The old demon's sigh echoed in the interspatial ring for a long time. His tone was so powerless. After subduing the old demon, Qin Hao immediately stuffed the oil lamp on the small table into the ring. I can't return empty-handed, right? There was also the medicine refining flask, which had many uses. The stronger the ability, the greater the range of its use. Then, Qin Hao looked around and muttered softly, "Hey, old demon, do you have any other treasures hidden here?" The Blood Emperor, who had lived for 3,000 years, should have at least 1 or 2 treasures, right? Otherwise, you're too embarrassing. However, the result disappointed Qin Hao. The old demon's answer was very straightforward. No, even I am your slave. What other treasures do you want? The meaning of his words was very simple. The old demon was the most powerful treasure here, the 1,000-year-old Blood Emperor. All right, Qin Hao nodded in tacit agreement. He felt that he was too greedy. At this time, a powerful consciousness shrouded over from afar, firmly wrapping the entire demon, subduing pagoda. Moreover, the speed was so fast that it gave people a feeling of rushing through the air. Qin Hao's soul power was very strong. He immediately sensed that this consciousness belonged to an emperor-level expert. Needless to say, there was only one primitive emperor in the Luo Shui Empire. It must be Yi Long Yuan's consciousness. Could it be? He sensed the existence of the old demon. Just as he had this thought, Qin Hao immediately shook his head and denied it. With the old demon's ability, Yi Long Yuan didn't have that ability. It must be for something else. Could it be that he noticed my abnormality in the pagoda? Qin Hao didn't dare to stay. He walked out through the secret door on the 13th floor. After signing the contract, Qin Hao knew what the old demon was thinking. According to the old demon's memory, this secret door on the 13th floor led to the top of the pagoda. He, Tian Boguang, Tian Shulin, we're about to meet. You didn't expect this, did you? When his hand pulled the secret door, Qin Hao's mouth curved into a sneer. Competing with spiritual power? You want me to be your slave? Let's see who will be the slave this time. However, Qin Hao didn't care about a slave like Tian Boguang at all. Only a high-grade blood emperor like the old demon was worthy of Qin Hao's attention. Whoosh! He pulled open the secret door on the 13th floor. In an instant, the outside world's sunlight rushed in, giving Qin Hao a sense of pleasure as if he had escaped from a cage. At this time, Imperial Palace, Imperial Study. He appeared again. Yi Long Yuan felt incredulous. When he shrouded the area with his mind again, Qin had already stepped out of the 13th floor. What on earth is going on? Yi Long Yuan was confused. Qin Hao had clearly lost his breath, but he appeared out of thin air again. What the hell? But at this time, he also found something strange. Because Qin Hao didn't go down the Yao-suppressing pagoda floor by floor like the other contestants. Instead, he appeared directly at the top of the pagoda. There was a secret door behind Qin Hao. Yi Long Yuan had never seen such a secret door in the Yao-suppressing pagoda. Immediately, he quickly probed with his mind and was greatly surprised. Why is there a 13th floor in the Yao-suppressing pagoda? In the Imperial Study, Yi Long Yuan's horrified cry was heard. Old Man Huang next to him was also dumbfounded. Even you don't know that there's a 13th floor in the Yao-suppressing pagoda. How could others know? On the other side, when the light spots flashed on the 12th floor, Tian Shulin was really shocked. He had never thought that his grandson would be so monstrous. At this moment, he swore to the heavens that he would cultivate his grandson to be worthy of the title of the #1 person in the land of Western Liang at all costs. Even if it cost him his life, even if it cost him all the money of Star Moon Academy, he would not hesitate. Tian Boguang was really too outstanding. With a 12th level spiritual power, he only asked one question. Who else? But was this light spot really his grandson? Just as Tian Shulin was feeling uneasy, the students who had entered the Yao-suppressing pagoda came out one after another. Tian Shulin immediately walked over excitedly. A pair of shrewd, old eyes swept over each student. Chapter 453. Chief Tian, senior brother Boguang, was the first to enter the tower. He was so fast that he disappeared in the blink of an eye. We couldn't catch up with him at all. The attitude of the contestants was extremely respectful, but they said helplessly. Tian Boguang's mental strength was so high that it was impossible to surpass him. When Tian Shulin heard that, he was overjoyed. He raised his nose proudly and ignored the contestants. In front of him, these contestants were like dog feces. They were all trash. The first batch of contestants was actually the contestants with the weakest mental strength. They had only climbed to the 6th floor. After they left, the second batch came. There were about 20 of them. They supported each other, their faces pale, and they felt weak all over. Hey, you guys, have you seen my grandson, Boguang? Tian Shulin immediately stopped them. He put his hands behind his back and asked majestically. No one dared to look at him directly. Chief Tian, senior brother Boguang, is a genius among geniuses. We can't catch up with his footsteps, but he should have climbed to the 10th floor. A contestant replied very carefully, afraid that he would say something wrong and make Tian Shulin unhappy. Tian Shulin waved his hand and let the second batch leave. This time, he was ecstatic and laughed in his heart. As expected of my grandson, Boguang, the light spot that reached the 12th floor was most likely him. This time, Tian Shulin's confidence was greatly increased, but he did not dare to be careless. He waited at the exit. The next moment, the third batch of contestants appeared. However, this time, there was only one person. It was Lin Feng, who had reached the 9th floor but could not go any further. Looking at Lin Feng, Tian Shulin frowned and hesitated to speak. At this time, Yao Lao walked up first and asked anxiously, Lin Feng, which floor did you reach? Deputy Chief Tian, I'm not talented. I only reached the 8th floor. Lin Feng said modestly, but he was very proud of himself. His requirements were not high. It was not easy to reach the 8th floor. Among all the contestants, only he had done it. Moreover, he had done his best. As soon as Lin Feng finished speaking, he was praised by many people around him, as expected of Qi Yang's disciple. Very good, Yao Lao nodded. No matter what, it was Qi Yang's glory. Then he asked, have you seen Qin Hao? Yes. At the mention of Qin Hao, Lin Feng was quite excited. He then briefly told Yao Lao about their encounter. If it wasn't for junior brother Qin Hao, I might not have been able to break through successfully. Fortunately, he helped me. I'm now a 4-star mortal saint. Junior brother Qin Hao has also surpassed me and climbed to the 9th layer. Whoosh! As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd went into an uproar. Tian Shulin instantly became incomparably nervous, and his eyelids twitched. Qin Hao had actually climbed to the 9th level. From the looks of it, it was still uncertain who would reach the 12th level in the end. Although he was nervous, Tian Shulin was still extremely confident in Tian Boguang. The dot of light that appeared on the 12th floor was definitely his grandson. After Lin Feng finished speaking, he also retreated. His words caused quite a stir, and it also whetted the crowd's appetite, making them look forward to it. After Lin Feng went down, Sword Young Master stepped out. Tian Shulin blocked him with a quick step and hurriedly said, Little Sword, which level did you climb to? Reporting to the headmaster, I climbed to the 9th level. Sword Young Master cupped his hands and bowed. Ha, not bad, not bad. You're much stronger than Qi Yang's students. Their disciples only climbed to the 8th level. Tian Shulin patted Sword Young Master's shoulder and showed off to Yao Lao beside him. He also gave Sword Young Master an encouraging look very casually. But in reality, his thoughts were not on Sword Young Master at all. So he acted carelessly and asked, Have you seen Boguang? Senior brother Boguang. When Sword Young Master heard this, he paused and replied, I saw him. He was the fastest, and he entered the 10th level with Buxiangshan before me and senior brother Xiaohua. What? Our 10 Directions Academy's Buxiangshan really entered the 10th level? Are you sure? Hearing this, Headmaster Fong of 10 Directions Academy hurriedly walked forward, his heart thumping. Yes, I'm ashamed to say this, but Xiangshan is indeed better than me, Sword Young Master said truthfully. Perhaps it was because Buxiangshan had cultivated the art of charm since she was young, so her spiritual grade had been strengthened to a certain extent, far surpassing an ordinary person, and even surpassing a genius like Sword Young Master. Ha ha! Headmaster Fong laughed heartily and let out a deep breath. The stone in his heart had finally been lifted. Although Wang Gui had died in 10 Directions Academy, there was still another genius. He decided that when he returned, he would definitely reward Buxiangshan greatly. Then have you seen Qin Hao? Yao Lao asked Sword Young Master at this time. All right, you can go now. Without giving Sword Young Master a chance to answer, Tian Shulin waved his hand and sent him away. Although he also wanted to know the answer, he was very unhappy with Yao Lao. Since Yao Lao wanted to know, Tian Shulin would not let him know. Yes, Sword Young Master responded and retreated with a cold face. He was the Sword King's successor, but he was ordered around by Tian Shulin and was not even given a reward. Sword Young Master was too lazy to say it. He was afraid that if he said it, Tian Shulin would be scared out of his wits. After all, Qin Hao had brought Xiaohua from the 9th floor to the 10th floor. But Sword Young Master was forever stuck in the same place. Medicine Jar, you should give up now. Even if Qin Hao reached the 10th floor, he's still not a match for my family's Boguang. Leave obediently now and don't be dragged down by Qin Hao and be ridiculed by everyone. Leave some dignity for yourself. Tian Shulin looked at Yao Lao with a deep voice. His heart longed for Yao Lao to leave. If he did not leave, Tian Shulin would not be able to use his fists and legs to brutally suppress Qin Hao. Old man will never give up until the last moment. Yao Lao secretly clenched his fists in his sleeves. In fact, he wanted to say that even if Qin Hao really lost at the last moment, he could not let Tian Shulin do as he pleased. Senior brother, Ouyang Hong walked to Yao Lao's side with an anxious expression. Regarding this, Yao Lao remained silent and chose to wait quietly. Tian Shulin saw this and sneered again. Let's see how long you can remain calm. At this time, someone stepped out of the Yao ceiling pagoda again. It was the exhausted Bushanshan. Dean, I'll do my best. Her voice was weak, and she seemed very unwilling. Just a little bit more, and she could have reached the 11th floor like Tian Shulin. I know. Your performance was very good. After returning to the academy, I'll immediately apply to the inner court for a high-grade cultivation technique suitable for you. Dean Shifeng stroked his beard with a smile and looked at Bushanshan with admiration. Why did he not realize that the third princess from the Heavenly Dragon Empire was so outstanding? But it was not too late to realize it now. He decided to properly nurture Bushanshan in the future. Little Shanshan, have you seen our Qiang University's Qin Hao? Oh, an old man's disciple, Tsaiogwa. Chapter 454. Bushanshan lowered her head in fear. Her voice trembled as she replied, Senior Ouyang Hong. This junior saw the two of them. At that time, this junior was with Master, don't worry. Aren't I out now? Before she could finish, Tsaiogwa had already walked out of the pagoda. He pinched his ears and smiled sheepishly at Ouyang Hong. In an instant, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone looked very anxious. Stinking brat, you worried me to death. Ouyang Hong grabbed Qi Xiaohua's shoulders and looked him up and down. Seeing that Qi Xiaohua was not injured but just a little tired, Ouyang Hong felt relieved and asked, Which floor did you and Qin Hao reach? Where is he? According to Sword Young Master and Bushanshan, Tsaiogwa should be with Qin Hao. Why was Qin Hao nowhere to be seen? Only Tsaiogwa had walked out of the pagoda alone. Could it be Qin Hao is still inside? Immediately, a large number of people looked over with anticipation. Yao Lao and Tian Shulin were especially anxious. Tsaiogwa faced Ouyang Hong and said slowly, Big brother and I went to the 10th floor together and met Bushanshan and Tian Boguang. But a trace of guilt flashed across his face. Tsaiogwa continued, But this disciple did his best and reached the limit. Then my big brother chased Tian Boguang to the 11th floor. Impossible. Tian Shulin didn't give the crowd time to react. He pushed Ouyang Hong away and pointed at Qi Xiaohua's nose. You little brat, you're deceiving the crowd with your lies. What a load of nonsense. Qin Hao will never be like my grandson and step onto the high and lofty 11th floor. As he spoke, Tian Shulin's chest heaved with anger. He couldn't tolerate Tsaiogwa any longer. He firmly believed that Tian Boguang was truly the number one person. This was the natural order of things. Many of the spectators around also looked puzzled. Tian Boguang had spiritual power of the 11th rank, so there was no doubt that he would reach the 11th level. Furthermore, everyone had clearly seen that only one of the dots of light on the Yao ceiling pagoda had actually crossed the threshold of the 11th level. It was most likely Tian Boguang. In order to establish the image of Qiang University in front of everyone, you're making up lies and distorting the facts. You're shameless to the extreme. Even so, it doesn't change the fact that Qin Hao is incompetent. He will never catch up with my grandson, Tian Shulin retorted. He even condensed a strand of his will and blasted it toward Tsaiogwa, preventing him from speaking again. Why are you so excited? Seeing this, Yao Lao took a step forward and stood in front of Tsaiogwa. At this moment, he was already laughing in his heart. If what Tsaiogwa said was true, and Qin Hao also climbed to the 11th level, then the outcome would be uncertain. It would be hard to say who would be the slave of who. He coldly looked at Tian Shulin. I advise you to stay put. Whether what Xiao Gua said is true or false, we'll know in a moment. Reality will tell us the answer. Reality my ass. Tian Shulin heavily snorted from his nose. He curled his lips and proudly said, I, Tian Shulin, am a venerable rank expert of the Tian family. Wu Guang inherited my excellent bloodline. He was born with a spiritual power of the 11th rank, and even awakened a flame source spirit. Qin Hao wants to fight with my grandson, and he wants to beat my grandson? White Sun in his dreams. Chief Tian, you have to believe it. Qin Hao really chased him to the 11th level. I saw it with my own eyes. At this moment, Bu Xianqun stood up and said, she was a witness. What you saw was just an illusion. Because you were defeated by my grandson, you're not satisfied and want to viciously slander him. You're deliberately colluding with Xiaogua. Do you think I can't see through it? Tian Shulin put his hands behind his back. He didn't bite at all. Bu Xianqun was speechless. She had never seen such a shameless person. Not only was he the chief of Star Moon Academy, but he was also a senior. Sister Xianqun, what do you have to say to an old dog? Be careful of his rabies, and he'll pounce on you and bite you. Xiaogua fiercely cursed. You little bastard. Tian Shulin went crazy on the spot. It was as if he really had rabies. His face was filled with anger. He was a venerable rank expert, the chief of Star Moon Academy. Who wouldn't treat him with respect and humility? In front of so many people, Xiao would dare to call him a dog? Lack of discipline. With a flick of his sleeve, a gust of wind rose from the ground and wreaked havoc towards Xiaogua. The surrounding people were so frightened that they quickly dodged. The attack of a venerable rank expert was no joke. Surnamed Tian, do you really treat me, old man Yao, as heir? Yao Lao's face was filled with anger. He stretched out his withered hand and grabbed at the air. Bang! The gust of wind in front of him was crushed into pieces. Seeing this, Tian Shulin unwillingly flung his sleeve and walked to the side. He wanted to kill Xiaogua with a slap, but unfortunately, Yao Lao was there to block him. Even so, he was still muttering to himself, saying that Qin Hao had most likely died inside, and that the person who climbed to the 12th floor was undoubtedly his grandson. No one could be compared to the Tian family. Since you're so confident, do you dare to make a bet with me? Yao Lao also began to compete. Tian Shulin was too arrogant and didn't put anyone in his eyes. What's the bet? What's the bet? Tian Shulin asked. Let's bet on who climbed to the 12th floor. If it's your grandson, I'll remove him from his position as vice president. But if it's Qin Hao, Yao Lao raised his head and looked at Tian Shulin with a sharp gaze. What? Do you want me to remove my position as president of Xingyu and slap myself in the face 3 times? All right, medicine jar, you're really vicious. I'm a dignified, honorable realm expert. Yet you want to make me lose all my face? No, I don't need you to remove your position as president, nor do I need you to slap yourself in the face 3 times. I just want you to apologize to our Qiyang University's Xiaogua and Shifang's Bu Xianqun. That's all. Yao Lao interrupted him. The surrounding people nodded and praised him. This was magnanimity. Yao Lao's demeanor was what a venerable rank expert should be like. At the same time, Bu Xianqun's face was puffed up with anger. Obviously, this request was very reasonable for her. All right, I'll bet with you. Is Qin Hao going to rebel? He's just a lowly ant from the countryside. How dare he try to compete with my noble grandson? Prepare to step down. Tian Shulin nodded and agreed due to the pressure from the surrounding people. In fact, he was not worried about losing at all. This was because his grandson had the highest spiritual power. He had a strong hunch that 99% of the light spots on the 12th floor belonged to Tian Buguang. He would definitely win this bet. Chapter 455. Keep your eyes open and witness my grandson's victory with your own eyes. As for Qin Hao, he will never win. When the time comes, I want to see you strip him of his position as vice president and run back to the medical tower with your tail between your legs. And the two of you, Tian Shulin pointed at Xiaogua first, then at Bu Xianqun. You're so young, but you're already scheming and jealous. You're obviously not as good as my grandson, but you maliciously slandered him. You want me, a venerable level powerhouse, to apologize to you 2 kids? Ha! I'm afraid you won't be able to wait your entire lives. After saying that, he put his hands behind his back and turned around. He would let reality give everyone a slap in the face and teach these ignorant fellows a lesson on how to behave. Reality would tell them that Tian Shulin's grandson was a peerless genius that was hard to come by in 10,000 years. However, almost as soon as he finished speaking, a figure covered in blood limped out of the demon, subduing pagoda. Everyone was deeply shocked as soon as he showed his head, because this person who was limping as if he had a broken leg was Tian Shulin's grandson. Tian Buguang. This. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? President Tian, quickly take a look at who's coming out. Immediately, some people called out anxiously. At this moment, Tian Shulin was still lost in his sweet dream. His back was still facing everyone, so he did not see his grandson's miserable state. Of course, it's most likely that useless Qin Hao who came out early, right? This is all within my expectations. Ha ha ha. Hearing the horrifying screams coming from behind him, Tian Shulin nodded in satisfaction. Although he was very excited at this moment, since Qin Hao came out early, proving that Qin Hao had lost, he still did not turn around to look. He wanted to give everyone the impression that he was as steady as Mount Tai. Therefore, Tian Shulin ignored his grandson's miserable state and even wanted to laugh a little. Grandpa! Boo-hoo! In the next second, Tian Buguang cried. He had just walked out of the demon, subduing pagoda, when he fell in front of everyone with a plop. His face was dejected, and he had lost his fighting spirit. Thump! Tian Shulin's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have heard his grandson's voice. Could it be that he was too excited and was hallucinating? Yes, I have to control myself. I have to suppress my excitement. Therefore, Tian Shulin remained rooted to the ground and did not even look back. Grandpa, I lost, Tian Buguang cried. Rumble! A shocking bolt of lightning struck Tian Shulin's head, and he heard his grandson's voice again. It was so clear. Could it be that this was not an illusion? At the same time, Tian Shulin also saw that there were many people around, pointing at him with strange expressions. Tian Shulin immediately came to his senses and turned around. Rumble! After looking at it, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. In front of Tian Shulin, Tian Buguang was lying on the ground with blood all over his body, his face full of pain. Was this still his high-spirited and ambitious grandson? What happened to being a peerless monster? Buguang, my grandson! Tian Shulin's heart felt as if it had been ruthlessly sliced by a blade. It was extremely painful. He hurriedly extended his hand to help Tian Buguang up. At the same time, a vigorous yuan qi was also injected into Tian Buguang's body, suppressing Tian Buguang's injuries. These injuries were actually not serious. It was just that the pressure at the entrance of the 11th floor was too great, and his body was slightly damaged. The most serious injury was his left leg, which was fractured. However, Tian Shulin realized that it was fortunate that Tian Buguang had eaten a bone-refining pill in advance, so he was lucky enough to walk back. If not for the bone-refining pill, this leg would most likely be crippled in the future. What's going on? Tian Shulin suppressed the depression in his heart and asked with a serious face. According to Tian Buguang's spiritual grade, he should not be in such a sorry state. Moreover, what did he say just now? He said that he had lost? For a moment, Tian Shulin found it hard to accept. It's all because of Qin Hao. If not for Qin Hao, I will be first this time. I defeated Lin Feng, defeated Sword Prince, and left Xiaogua and Bu Xianchen far behind. I took the lead and rushed to the 11th floor, but Tian Buguang shook his head in grief and indignation. The pressure in the tower was extremely great. Every floor steadily suppressed the corresponding spiritual grade. In order to reach the 11th floor, he did not even care about his life and climbed in. However, in the end, Qin Hao caught up and surpassed him. I was stuck at the entrance. Qin Hao went to the 12th floor. Tian Buguang's tears fell like rain. His heart was really painful. Immediately, his gaze suddenly turned fierce. He gritted his teeth and said, Grandpa, you must kill Qin Hao. If he doesn't die, I won't live anymore. Boom. The third time, it was as if another thunderbolt had struck Tian Shulin heavily. It hit him so hard that his feet swayed, and his old body almost fell to the ground. The most outstanding descendant of the Tian family, the grandson that he, Tian Shulin, regarded as a treasure and had high hopes for, had actually lost. Holy **T. That's a level 11 spiritual power. Qin Hao had surpassed the spiritual grade 11 and stepped into the 12th floor. At this moment, Tian Shulin's heart was filled with mixed feelings. It was as if he had fallen from the clouds into the abyss. This huge contrast made him feel like he was better off dead. Haha, this is so satisfying. Like I said, people can create miracles, but not everyone can create miracles. Only Qin Hao from Qiyang University has this ability. Yao Lao's suppressed anger was completely released. In an instant, he looked as if he had become decades younger. His face was glowing. Ouyang Hong, who was next to him, was dumbfounded. He was deeply shocked. The person who had climbed to the 12th floor was actually Qin Hao. This was unbelievable. The tens of thousands of people who had surrounded the Yao-suppressing pagoda were all stunned, as if they had lost their souls. However, when they saw the smiles on Xiaohua and Bu Xiangqin's faces, they came to their senses. It turned out that these two children were not lying. Tian Shulin, you've lost. At this moment, Yao Lao had already walked up to Tian Shulin with a cold face. Tian Shulin's face was extremely ugly, as if he had eaten rat feces. He was at a loss. Grandpa, don't worry. The inside of the Yao-suppressing pagoda is extremely terrifying. It's not something that humans can withstand. Even with my spiritual power of the 11th rank, I can barely climb to the entrance of the 11th floor. I'm sure that Qin Hao won't be able to stay in there for long. Even if he enters the 12th floor, there's an 80% chance that he will die in there. Tian Buguang gave his grandfather a look that said, "Don't worry, Qin Hao is dead." In that case, my grandson didn't lose? Qin Hao has already died? Tian Shulin's eyes were glowing. The surprise on his face was self-evident. No, I'm sorry. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Chief Tian. I'm not dead yet. Suddenly, a voice that Tian Buguang and Tian Shulin did not want to hear the most rang out. The voice came from above. They raised their heads and saw Qin Hao standing at the top of the demon subduing pagoda. His hands were clasped behind his back as he faced the wind. His robes fluttered in the wind. Even though his entire body was soaked in blood, the air of arrogance he exuded was breathtaking. Crack! The fourth bolt of lightning struck, and Tian Shulin's mouth was wide open. His eyes were wide open, and he was struck so hard that he felt like roasting the heavens. Qin Hao was not dead. Not only was he not dead, but he had also come out of the pagoda. Chapter 456. He had personally experienced the pressure in the demon-banishing pagoda. It was extremely terrifying. How could Qin Hao walk out of the 12th level unscathed? Even if he did walk out, he shouldn't be so unscathed, right? At the very least, he should be limping like Tian Buguang. Oh, I know. It must be Boss Yao Lao who helped you secretly. That's why you walked out of the 12th level. Qin Hao, you're obviously cheating. I can't accept this. Everyone, come and take a look. They're too vicious. Tian Buguang looked up and glared at Qin Hao, accusing him of using underhanded means to win the competition. Once these words were spoken, Yao Lao's pupils abruptly shrank as he stared sternly at Tian Buguang. This bastard dared to tarnish his reputation. There was a lot of discussion around, but no one believed Tian Buguang's words. In fact, no one believed him. When the competition started, all the sect leaders secretly released their consciousnesses, trying to spy on the situation in the demon-banishing pagoda. However, the demon-banishing pagoda was covered by a barrier, blocking the hundreds of sage-level cultivators outside. This barrier was very strong. Everyone guessed that it was most likely set up by the Dragon Abyss Emperor. Even Yao Lao and Tian Shulin, two supremacy-level cultivators, couldn't penetrate the demon-banishing pagoda's defenses, let alone sage-level cultivators. Yao Lao wanted to help, but he didn't have the ability. It was obvious that Tian Buguang was lying and slandering a good person. In fact, when Tian Buguang said this, his grandfather, Tian Shulin, had already taken a few steps back awkwardly, because his grandfather had already tried. Back then, he also wanted to help his grandson secretly. In the end, he couldn't even send a trace of his vitality into the demon-banishing pagoda. Look at all the seniors here. Which one of them believes you? Tian Buguang, I didn't expect you to be such a sore loser. Qin Hao looked down with his hands behind his back. When his gaze landed on Tian Buguang, it was full of disdain. At the same time, he saw Chun Wanqin smiling at him from the crowd. Her smile was full of trust. Qin Hao nodded lightly. Everything was understood without words. In fact, when everyone was worried about Qin Hao, only Chun Wanqin believed that he would win in the end. How can this be? Demon-banishing pagoda's corresponding spiritual grade. How can you walk out of the 12th level? Tian Buguang shouted in despair. He still couldn't believe it. Because I have a spiritual strength of the 13th level. Qin Hao shouted as he stretched out his right hand in front of him, growing 3. This was Qin Hao's spiritual will. In fact, once a person measured their spiritual grade, they no longer needed to rely on any tools to release their spiritual grade freely. To tell you the truth, not only did I pass the 12th level, but there's also a 13th level that you don't know about. At this point, Qin Hao's words came to a halt. Even if he didn't continue, he still told everyone. He successfully stepped out of the 13th level and stood at the top of the pagoda. Rumble. Everyone was shocked by Qin Hao. Spiritual strength of the 13th level. A peerless genius of the 13th level had appeared in the land of Western Liang. Qin Hao's talent was monstrous. It had been hundreds of years since Western Liang had seen such a shocking scene. When Tian Shulin showed off his grandson's 11th level spiritual strength, everyone was shocked. Qin Hao's spiritual strength was more than a few streets ahead of Tian Buguang. The two of them were not on the same level. Poor Tian Buguang wanted to crush Qin Hao, but in the end he was just slapping himself in the face and becoming a stepping stone for Qin Hao's rise. At this moment, whether it was Tian Buguang, Tian Shulin, Yao Lao, or Ouyang Hong, even Sword Gongzi, Bu Xiangshan, and Xiao Wu widened their eyes in shock. Spiritual strength of the 13th level. It was simply too high. Brother Qin Hao, are you still a human? Sword Gongzi said in a daze. No wonder my charm didn't work on Qin Hao. It seems like I was too arrogant. Bu Xiangshan looked at Qin Hao with a hint of admiration. Qin Hao was the only one who wasn't charmed by her charm. This man was too different. You're indeed my boss. Xiao Wu began to act like a follower. Yes, you're right. You're indeed our boss. Yi Shuihan put his hand on Xiao Wu's shoulder. He was once again conquered by Qin Hao. 10. 3. Grade. Of. Essence. God. Strength. Tian Shulin's face became extremely ugly. He gritted his teeth and spoke word by word. Every word seemed to use up all his strength. It could be said that Qin Hao, with his 13th level spiritual strength, had completely suppressed his grandson. Tian Shulin had never expected this outcome. In terms of physical strength, his grandson was no match for him. In terms of spiritual strength, his grandson was once again left in the dust by Qin Hao. At this moment, he completely understood the hatred in Tian Buguang's words. Grandpa, kill Qin Hao. If Qin Hao doesn't die, I won't live. If this person isn't eliminated, my grandson will never be able to make a name for himself. Tian Shulin clenched his fists. In his heart, he had already put Qin Hao on the list of dead people. However, today was not the day. What kind of **T competition is this? There's no fairness at all. It's too shady. Let's not compete. Buguang, go home with Grandpa. Tian Shulin glared at Qin Hao fiercely and pulled Tian Buguang to leave. Chief Tian, you seem to have forgotten something. Want to leave? How could Qin Hao let him do as he wished? He opened his arms and slowly descended from the top of the pagoda to the ground. He landed right in front of Tian Shulin. Qin Hao blocked him. I want to leave. Do you dare stop me? Tian Shulin's face was tense. He hated Qin Hao to the core. Of course, I can't stop you. However, Tian Buguang still owes me a bet. Qin Hao was not afraid of him. His voice was sonorous and powerful. Qin Hao, don't push your luck. You want me to be your slave? Give up. Relying on his grandpa's presence, Tian Buguang intended to go back on his words. Did you hear that? My grandson's words represent the will of the old man. Tian Shulin said coldly. Hee hee, Qin Hao laughed. Is this what Chief Tian meant by every word is a nail? How disappointing. There's one more thing that I hope you all understand. From the beginning to the end, I never thought of letting Tian Buguang be my dog. He's not worthy. At this point, Qin Hao's eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. He did not need a dog. He wanted Tian Buguang's life. Brat, you're courting death. Tian Shulin was furious. Without any explanation, he raised his palm and blasted it toward Qin Hao. Tian, you've gone too far, Yao Lao shouted. Before the other party could hit Qin Hao, he also raised his palm to meet the attack. Chapter 457. Tian Shulin took a few steps back and pointed at Yao Lao. Medicine jar, do you really want to start a life and death battle with me over Qin Hao? So what? If you want to fight, then let's fight. Yao Lao assumed a stance. He was willing to disregard his own life for Qin Hao's sake. At the same time, the three-legged golden crow in the sky let out a loud cry. The flames on its body also buzzed and expanded to a radius of 30 meters. A Yuan Venerate and a Beast King were enough to pose a fatal threat to Tian Shulin. Grandpa, you can't do that. Tian Buguang panicked. Tian Shulin turned around abruptly and raised his hand to slap his grandson's face. However, when his palm touched Tian Buguang's face, he stopped abruptly. He couldn't bear to hit him. How could he not know that he couldn't fight Yao Lao head-on at the moment? However, it wasn't up to him now. Otherwise, he would have to bow his head and apologize to the two children in front of tens of thousands of people. Furthermore, Qin Hao wanted Tian Buguang's life. This was all Tian Buguang's fault. Medicine jar, why do you have to be so overbearing? All right, I'll apologize to the two children. Tian Shulin had no choice but to clench his fists and apologize to Xiaogua and Bushanshan. However, his voice was very soft. What did you say? I didn't hear you clearly. Xiaogua slapped Tian Shulin's face and turned his face to the side to let Tian Shulin repeat himself. I said, I sincerely apologize for my slip of the tongue. Tian Shulin's palms were pale as he clenched his fists. I'm still too young to hear you clearly. Xiaogua took a few steps forward and extended his ear. I didn't hear you clearly either. Bushanshan couldn't help but laugh. Old man, I'm sorry. I hope you won't lower yourself to my level. Buguang, let's go. Tian Shulin shouted loudly and immediately pulled Tian Buguang to leave. As a dignified Yuan Venerate, he felt too ashamed to continue living. Hold on, Tian Buguang, and I still have a bet. Qin Hao refused to let go and blocked him again. Brat, don't fail to appreciate my kindness. I won't let you punish Buguang. Just like if you lose, the medicine jar won't let me deal with you. Everyone knows this, so why do you insist on not letting it go? Tian Shulin was really infuriated. Also, let me give you a piece of advice. After all, Chen Wanqin is still a student of Star Moon Academy. Naturally, I cannot do anything to her. But as for her master, I can abolish him with a single thought. You'd better think carefully. Tian Shulin began to threaten again. Qin Hao naturally wouldn't be threatened by him. But at this time, Chen Wanqin's heart was deeply touched by these harsh words. She couldn't help but look at Qin Hao with a bitter expression, hoping that Qin Hao would take a step back for her. Her master was a good person. After Chen Wanqin had entered the academy, she had taken good care of her. She had been as kind as a grandmother. Tian Buguang, I will temporarily entrust your life to you. If anything happens to Wanqin and her master in Star Moon Academy, what can you do? Tian Buguang interrupted Qin Hao and laughed arrogantly. Do you think you can fight your way into Star Moon Academy? Take a look at yourself first. What if I join in? Yao Lao stepped forward coldly. Tian Buguang's mouth twitched a few times. He didn't dare talk back and hurriedly hid behind his grandfather. Trash! Qin Hao shouted. Old man agrees. Tian Shulin was about to go crazy. After I return, I definitely won't do anything to Chen Wanqin's master. Furthermore, Chen Wanqin is my granddaughter-in-law. After a year, when her ice technique has reached the large success stage, she will marry my grandson and help him cultivate. That's impossible. After a year, I will leave with Wanqin. At that time, if anyone dares to stop me, I will kill them, even if the blood will flow like a river. Qin Hao replied in a lifeless voice. He was incomparably determined. Fine, I will wait for that day. I want to see what ability you have to take her away from old man and make my Star Moon Academy bleed like a river. Wang, let's go. Tian Shulin was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He stared seriously at Qin Hao, wanting to imprint this brat's appearance into his bones. With a wave of his hand, he swept up Tian Buoguang and Chen Wanqin and left. As for Qin Hao, he didn't stop them. Tian Shulin was an honorable realm expert. He couldn't force him too much. If he let him loose and fought, it would be very terrifying. Moreover, it would implicate Yao Lao. Wanqin, after a year, I will definitely bring you out. Wait for me. Looking at the ball of light flying into the distance, Qin Hao circulated his essence and shouted loudly. However, he didn't get a response from Chen Wanqin. Qin Hao wasn't depressed because he knew that Chen Wanqin's face must be blooming with a smile. She believed in Qin Hao. Brother, are we just going to let them go? Let them take Sister Wanqin away? Xiaowu pointed to the sky and said unwillingly. Enduring now is for a heavy blow in the future. Qin Hao also wanted to keep them. He could only blame himself for being too weak. However, this weakness was only temporary. After a year, he would make Old Man Tian pay the price for what he did today. The Rising Star competition had come to an end. Qin Hao was the well-deserved champion. Next was the awards ceremony. According to the rankings, Qin Hao got the Heavenly Spirit Pearl, 100,000 medium Xian crystals, and 300,000 lower Xian crystals as he wished. Xiaowu took second place. Bu Xianxin was third, and Sword Prince was fourth. Since the man in red and Wang Gui were beaten to death by Qin Hao, and Long Feng was disabled, Lin Feng was lucky enough to be promoted to fifth place. Tian Buoguang should have been in the top 5. However, as soon as he left, Big Mouth Li announced that he had forfeited and deprived Xingyue Academy of the prize. This made the spectators sigh. Big Mouth Li was obviously venting for Qin Hao. As a result, the elders of Star Moon Academy did not manage to get anything. They left the arena with their disciples in a sorry state. There's one more thing. By the will of the heavens, Emperor Yi decrees. Qin Hao, the champion of the Rising Star competition and the chief disciple of Qiangbin's outer yard, will be a second-class earl of the Luoshui Empire. He can enjoy an extra imperial salary, which will be sent to Qiangbin every month. Haha, Qin Hao, congratulations to you. Oh no, look at my mouth. Congratulations to Count Qin. After Big Mouth Li finished reading the imperial edict, he walked up to Qin Hao and congratulated him. At the same time, he handed the imperial edict to Qin Hao. Boom! The crowd was shocked again. Oh my god! Qin Hao was conferred a title by the Emperor of Dragon Abyss. Wasn't this title a little too big? It wasn't just big, it was too big. Only the important ministers of the imperial court and the generals who had made great contributions in battle would be given additional titles. Titles were different from official positions. Compared to an official position, it was much more prominent and honorable. Chapter 458. My lord, isn't the title you gave Qin Hao a little too? In the imperial study, Old Man Huang looked at Yulong Yuan and wanted to say that the title was indeed too big, but he didn't finish his words. Do you think it's too small? Yulong Yuan patted his thigh, shook his head, and said guiltily, It's indeed a little small. I should have made Qin Hao first Marquis. No, I should have made him a Grand Duke. Qin Hao was Yi Shuhen's sworn brother. It was only a matter of time before he entered the Luo Shui court, and he would be entrusted with important tasks. However, it was not appropriate for Yulong Yuan to show too much affection to Qin Hao now. Otherwise, it would be easy to arouse suspicion. It was also inconvenient for him to go out and crown him as the champion. He was not ready to recognize his son yet. Only after getting the approval of Xinque could he make public Yi Shuhen's identity as the first prince. That day would not be too far away. Yi Longyuan had found a breakthrough, which was Qin Hao. Qin Hao was Qiangbin's seed disciple. He could follow the vine to the melon and get close to Xinque again by making a fuss about him. As the emperor of the Luo Shui Empire, Yi Longyuan had a wife but couldn't get close to her. He had a son but couldn't recognize him. It was quite sad. Tian Shulin was very arrogant today. If it were not inconvenient for me to take action, I would have slapped him in the face long ago. Yi Longyuan's tone was heavy and full of anger. Old man Huang nodded. His lord's consideration was correct. But it's convenient for you now. After that, he smiled shamelessly. Hearing this, Yi Longyuan also smiled. Immediately, his figure flashed and disappeared from the imperial study. He turned into a soaring aura and chased after Tian Shulin from the imperial palace. It was inconvenient for him to take action in front of Yi Shuihan. Now, it was indeed convenient. After catching Tian Shulin this time, the old man screamed miserably. Luo Shui Square. Qin Hao was indeed surprised that he was conferred the title of Count of Luo Shui. It seemed a little too sudden, but he didn't think too much about it. It was just an earl. Qin Hao didn't think much of him. At this time, the crowd gradually dispersed after the initial shock. Qin Hao walked in front of Yao Lao. Without saying anything, he knelt down on one knee and raised his head to plead, "Vice President, please save my master." Yao Lao was actually a supreme stage almighty who had hidden his cultivation. Then, in the medicine tower of the outer court, there must be a lot of peerless herbs. Maybe there were herbs that could awaken the core Xian. "You brat, get up." Yao Lao couldn't take it. Ouyang Hong had told him everything that had happened during the competition. Qin Hao had never knelt before the heavens or the earth. He had only knelt before his master. He was willing to bend his waist and kowtow to his brother. "You are the pride of our Qi Yang Academy. You have won many battles and won the championship. Today you have brought great glory to the academy. It's just that." Yao Lao's tone was very emotional. It could be said that Qin Hao's fame had spread throughout the world after a single battle. Today, the high-ranking officials of Luo River, the big shots of the military, and over 1,000 sect masters were all witnesses. However, it was not that easy to awaken the core Xian. He had already heard about this from Yuning Chang. "I can use my means to refine the 9 revolutions soul return pill for you. Unfortunately, I don't have any of those herbs." Yao Lao had planned to reward Qin Hao handsomely. Now, he couldn't even satisfy his small request. He felt a little guilty. "Then, please let me enter the Qi Yang Medicine Valley. I hope that the vice president will agree." Qin Hao continued. His eyes were very serious. He would never give up on the core Xian. "Don't call me vice president. I don't feel comfortable hearing it. Get up first." Yao Lao pulled Qin Hao up with one hand. He didn't reveal his identity in the past, because he was afraid of this kind of estrangement. The Medicine Valley only opens once every 3 years. There are still 2 years until the next time. When the time comes, the top disciples of the 4 major academies will form teams to enter to search for the herbs. There are many dangers inside. It's not something you can imagine. I can give you a spot in advance, but you have to consider it carefully. Don't treat life as child's play. Yao Lao had the power to supervise the Medicine Valley. His words carried weight. His words instantly put Qin Hao at ease. However, at the same time, he also told him that those who entered the Medicine Valley were the top disciples of the 4 major academies. They were all seniors who had cultivated for more than 10 years or even decades. Their strength was even stronger than the inner academy elders. Almost all of them were almost at the king level. Qin Hao had just entered the Qiyang Medicine Valley for less than half a year. It was really too much. To put it bluntly, it was like throwing an egg against a rock. Yao Lao was really worried about him. For example, the sacred medicine that was given to Qin Hao was brought out from the Medicine Valley by a disciple of the Qiyang Medicine Valley. However, that disciple was seriously injured and passed away soon after. "I'm not afraid," Qin Hao said seriously. 2 years? That was enough. In 2 years, Qin Hao had enough confidence to raise his strength to the king level. This was because he had a celestial spirit pearl in his hands. "All right, I'll let you go." Yao Lao saw that he couldn't stop him, so he patted Qin Hao on the shoulder. In addition, the Outer Academy will give the freshmen 2 months off so that the new disciples can go home and report that they are safe. However, most of the disciples are unwilling to go back because it will affect their cultivation. Qin Hao, you and Little Melon are now strong enough to enter the Inner Academy. I suggest that you stay too. At this time, Ouyang Hong took over the topic. No, I want to go home. I want to go home too. Almost instantly, Qin Hao and Xiaowa spoke at the same time. No matter how important it was not as important as going home. Moreover, the Daqin Prefecture was facing the biggest crisis in history. Yao Lao and Ouyang Hong were startled by their answers. Then, they nodded their heads in praise. In that case, you can go back. Remember, you only have 2 months. When you come back, immediately report to the Inner Academy. Now, you are already disciples of the Inner Academy. Yao Lao waved his hand, and a brilliance enveloped Qin Hao and Xiaowa. Suddenly, their clothes changed. They changed into the red attire of the Qiyang Inner Academy disciples. They looked very fierce and had a chivalrous aura. Dean Ouyang, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can lend me your flying artifact. Qin Hao was eager to go home and went straight to the point. What? You want my flying artifact? Ouyang Hong bluffed. Old Man's flying artifact symbolized his identity as the Dean of the Outer Academy. Its speed was comparable to that of a king's stage, and it was very expensive to make. Without enough strength, what if someone snatched it away? That would be a huge loss. Ahem. In the next second, Yao Lao coughed and looked at Ouyang Hong. His eyes seemed to be saying, "You don't need me to teach you what to do you? Master." At this time, Xiaowa also pulled Ouyang Hong's sleeve with a pleading look. Okay, I'll lend it to you. Ouyang Hong gritted his teeth and raised his palm. The huge flying artifact landed on the ground from the space ring. Suddenly, it shone with a strong aura of treasure. Qin Hao had just won the championship for Qiyang and was highly regarded by Yao Lao. Moreover, Ouyang Hong had just accepted Xiaowa as his disciple. Under the pressure of his disciple and eldest senior brother, he had no choice but to lend it to him. Thank you, Dean Ouyang. Thank you, Master. You're so nice. Wax. Chapter 459. Yao Lao smiled. With a casual flick of his finger, a strand of vital energy shot from his fingertip into the spaceship. If Qin Hao was in any danger, he could use this strand of vital energy to lock onto his position. Then, he could directly tear the void and teleport to Qin Hao's side, just like when Tian Shulin saved Tian Boiwang, although it would consume a lot of his energy. At this moment, Yao Lao also noticed the anxiety in Qin Hao and Xiaowa's eyes. Therefore, he had to take precautions. Go and return early. I will send an order to the inner court to arrange your accommodations in advance. Yao Lao waved his hand and settled everything. Then, he let Qin Hao leave. Boss, take me with you to show off and fly. I have nothing to do. Brother Qin Hao, I also want to play with you. As soon as Qin Hao took a step, Yi Shuihan and Nalanli chased after him and begged. This is not appropriate. An unexpected voice rang out. Everyone turned around and saw that it was Old Man Huang from the outer court. This time, Old Man Huang came with the elders to watch the competition. However, after arriving, he disappeared. Why did he suddenly appear now? Greetings, Vice President Dean Ouyang. Old Man Huang bowed and said with a smile. After seeing Old Man Huang, Yishuihin's face drooped. He knew that he couldn't leave. Since he was young, every time he wanted to go on a long journey, he was stopped by Old Man Huang. Shuihan, you stay in the Imperial City. I have some important things to do when I go back. Qin Hao could see that Old Man Huang didn't want Yishuihan to leave. Therefore, he patted his shoulder. Old Man Huang saw this and was overjoyed. He gave Qin Hao a thumbs up. This kid was really smart. Brother Qin Hao, Nalanli tugged at Qin Hao's clothes. She was very reluctant to part with him. She was used to relying on him. Big brother, why don't we let her go back with us? Xiaowa looked at Nalanli shyly. He seemed to be in love. But at this moment, Naransu spoke. She pulled Nalan Li and said seriously, "Sister, don't forget that we have important things to do." There was a hint of warning in his words. Nalan Li, Nalan Li, Nalan Li, Nalan Li, Nalan Li, and Nalan Li, Nalan Li. Of Nalan Li's mother. Only that person had the ability to save their mother. She immediately apologized to Qin Hao. "I'm sorry, Qin Hao. Ever since Xiaoli came to the Scarlet Sun Institute, she has been troubling you. But this time, I'm afraid I can't go with you." Okay. Qin Hao's eyes lit up. He had already seen that Naransu was hiding something. He patted Nalan Li's head and said, "Nalan Li, be good. Wait for me at the school. I'll bring you delicious food. It's famous food from my hometown." "Really?" Nalan Li clasped her hands. Her eyes were twinkling. She was a foodie. Naransu was speechless. "Yao Lao, let's go. I'm indebted to you for taking care of me ever since I came to Qiyang. I'll never forget your kindness." Qin Hao didn't waste any more time. He held Siowa's hand and jumped onto the spaceship. A dazzling light suddenly bloomed. The spaceship rose from the ground and rose into the sky. Then, it turned into a powerful stream of light and flew towards the southwest. That was their hometown, Heaven's Wall City. Qin Hao was very grateful to Yao Lao. He cherished their relationship as a teacher and a friend. "Sir, wait. Wait for Xing." As soon as Qin Hao left, Xing, who was dressed in snow-white clothes, rushed into the field. She was chased by an anxious Mr. Hai. Looking at the stream of light that disappeared in the sky, Xing face was filled with grievance. "Why couldn't you wait for me? I'm here to give you a surprise." Yao Lao murmured. He was immediately attracted by the girl in front of him. He could sense that the girl's physique was extraordinary. "Miss Xing." Naransu smiled and immediately went up to greet her. Then she exclaimed, "It's only been a few days, and you've already advanced to master. Hello, Sister Zhu. Hello, Sister Xiaoli." Xing's mind was not on the two of them at all. She looked very unhappy. She had gone from a powerless young girl to a grandmaster in such a short amount of time. Her cultivation speed was so fast that even Xing herself was shocked. Then, she was very excited. She wanted to share this joy with Qin Hao. She had come to Qin Hao to make Qin Hao happy, but Boss's eyes are really sharp. He casually bought a maid, and now her realm is higher than mine. To the side, Yi Shuihan was so ashamed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. Xing strength had already reached Master 4 stars, 2 stars higher than Yi Shuihan's. This girl was a monster, just like Boss. So this girl is Qin Hao's maid. Interesting. When Qin Hao comes back, let him bring you to Qiangbin. Don't waste your bones. Yao Lao looked at Xing a few more times, and then looked at Ouyang Hong. He nodded with a smile, and the two turned into light and left. This Xing, she was really not simple. If he guessed correctly, she had the body of a celestial immortal. Damn, I paid a high price to invite 10 mortal saints, 5 profound sages, and 1 heaven saint powerhouse to teach Miss Xing together. That's how she could have her current cultivation. Who was that old guy just now? How dare he steal from me? Old Fourth High. Old Fourth High pointed in the direction Yao Lao left and said with a glare, "Who do you think you are? How dare you challenge Vice President Qiyang just because you're filthy rich?" Old Man Huang stood out and said in a deep voice, Revered Envoy Huang. Suddenly seeing Old Man Huang, Hai Laosi was shocked. The two of them were not strangers. The reason why the Hai Family Trading Company could establish itself in the Imperial City was not only because of Hai Fei Zi's own ability, but also because someone took care of her background. Old Man Huang was Yi Long Yuan's trusted aide, and he had private dealings with Old Fourth High. Immediately, he almost exposed the other party's true identity. However, in the next second, he was immediately shocked by Old Man Huang's words. That ordinary-looking old fellow who had wanted to snatch Xing away just now was actually Red Sun's elusive vice president. Old Fourth High's heart was about to burst. Old Fourth High, you guys chat first. If you have time, come and have a drink with this old man. After intimidating the other party, Old Fourth High left with his hands behind his back. Okay, okay. I'll treat you next time. I'll treat you next time. Old Fourth High wiped the sweat off his forehead and respectfully sent off Old Man Huang. The chief messenger of Emperor Long Yuan was someone he could not afford to offend. After seeing Old Man Huang completely disappear, Old Fourth High let out a deep breath and looked at Yi Xuan. He took out a piece of paper from his bosom and carefully handed it to the other party. Young Master Yi, please send this to my young Master Qin Hao. Do not lose it. It's very important. This secret letter was the evidence of Mu Chuanfeng's crimes that Qin Hao had asked Old Fourth High to collect some time ago. It recorded all of Mu Chuanfeng's crimes. As long as it was there, Qin Hao had undoubtedly grasped Mu Chuanfeng's death door. It would be easy to kill this old bastard. Chapter 460. In the sky above Shiliang, a 50-meter-long treasure ship was flying through the clouds and fog, heading straight to the southwest. It was so fast that it left a 1,000-meter-long tail light behind it. It was like a shooting star flying across the sky with a rumbling sound. Below them, many citizens of the small countries saw the spectacular scene before their eyes. They were scared and envious at the same time. I wonder which empire's mighty figure is on the ship. Judging from momentum, I'm afraid that some place is going to be destroyed. Every time a large ship like this flew past, it would set off a storm of blood. The commoners would also sigh repeatedly. The strong could destroy mountains and break mountains. As for the weak like them, they could only resign themselves to fate. Is everything settled? On the ship, Qin Hao opened his eyes. He was meditating in his room to recover the energy he had used during the competition. At this moment, Xiaoguo walked over silently and nodded. Everything is settled. I put 50,000 Xian crystals in the engine cabin. We will arrive at the Heaven's Wall City in 3 days. He smiled comfortably. With the hundreds of thousands of low-grade Xian crystals he had won from winning second place, it would be no problem for him to fly for a month. Not to mention that Qin Hao had 100,000 mid-grade Xian crystals. Although he was still anxious, he was finally relieved. It's a pity that Sister Wanqin didn't come back with us. Xiaoguo clenched his fists. This battle might be very dangerous. Because Wanqin is not here, we can't slack off. Let's go cultivate. Qin Hao waved his hand. Okay. Xiaoguo turned around and left. His eyes were full of fighting spirit. This battle concerned the survival of the 6 cities. There couldn't be any mistakes. After Xiaoguo left, Qin Hao was lost in thought again. He knew very well that the two of them couldn't fight against the 5 million troops of the Yuan family. But Qin Hao didn't want to use the two of them to fight against the 5 million troops. He only needed to take the heads of the enemy's commander-in-chief and general. In other words, they had to crush Yuan Huai's father and uncles in terms of strength. 1 profound sage and a dozen mortal sages? Qin Hao closed his eyes and smiled gently. Based on the information provided by Bu Xiangxin, their chances of winning this battle were quite high. Qin Hao is currently a 6-star mortal saint. Even against a 9-star mortal saint, he was unbeatable. Taking on Yuan Huai's father alone wouldn't be a problem. After Xiaoguo transformed, no one would be his match except for Qin Hao and Yuan Huai's father. The crux of the matter was that the 5 million strong army was a headache. In addition, there was also the allied army of the Northern Martial Country, the Brave War Country, and the Fengyue Country. A motley crew was very annoying. With such a huge military force, if they were to launch a frontal assault, 1 wave would be enough to flatten the 6 cities of Heaven's Wall. Old demon. Qin Hao whispered, Master, I'm here. If you need anything, just tell me. If you're polite with me, I'll get angry with you. The old demon immediately replied. He was ready at any time, and his voice also came out of the spatial ring. Are you interested in fighting with 6 million troops? Qin Hao asked. 6 million? The old demon's mind was a little muddled. Thinking about the overwhelming lineup, he felt his scalp go numb. Are you afraid? Qin Hao muttered in dissatisfaction. How is that possible? It's not even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. The old demon replied bluntly. Okay, wait for the order. After Qin Hao finished speaking, he fell silent again. The old demon was the Blood Emperor in his previous life. He cultivated the soul-devouring technique, which was very suitable for dealing with shrimp soldiers and crab generals. His soul was very weak. After coming out of the bottle, it degenerated from the dignified Emperor Yuan to a 3-star Yuan Monarch, and it was still degenerating. It was only because of Qin Hao's blood essence that his soul was not destroyed. The power of the blood essence could only slow down the time it took for his soul to weaken. If he wanted the old demon to stabilize his condition, he had to find a suitable candidate as soon as possible to possess him. Even so, it shouldn't be a problem for him to devour the souls of tens of thousands of people once he appeared. At that time, the morale of the 6 million troops would be shaken, and they wouldn't have the time to attack Heaven's Wall City. It's my turn to perform. In the spatial ring, the old demon let out a lewd laugh. He was very excited. What he liked to do the most was, of course, showing off. Yes, I'm ready at any time. Master, please whip me to your heart's content. After preparing a countermeasure, Qin Hao took out an unpolished jade from the spatial ring. He lowered his head and looked at the jade in his palm, a myriad of thoughts running through his mind. This unpolished jade was a communication item left behind by Qin Yun after saving Qin Hao's parents 3 years ago. Now, Qin Hao clearly remembered that Qin Yun said that once Qin Hao's strength broke through to the sage level, he could take out the unpolished jade. Then, Qin Yun would tell him the real whereabouts of his parents. And now, Qin Hao had met the requirements. A powerful clan, a bloody battlefield. I want to see what kind of place it is. Nodding, Qin Hao gathered qi in his palm. A light flashed in his palm, and a strand of pure essence entered the unpolished jade. Whoa! The unpolished jade immediately let out a hazy halo. The situation was different from the first time Qin Yun appeared. At that time, the unpolished jade shone brightly. Just as Qin Hao was feeling puzzled, for large words slowly appeared on the unpolished jade. Abandoned Shiliang. Abandoned Shiliang? Qin Hao frowned slightly. Wasn't abandoned Shiliang the capital of the great Qing dynasty 2,000 years ago? Speaking of which, Crown Prince Yong Shou died there. This was the immoral deed of the old demon. What did Qin Yun mean by giving Qin Hao a signal about abandoned Shiliang? Could it be that he wants me to go to abandoned Shiliang? Qin Hao guessed and put away the unpolished jade. Since Qin Yun only told him these 4 words, the whereabouts of his parents should be related to abandoned Shiliang. After dealing with the personal army of the Yuan family, Qin Hao decided to make a trip to abandoned Shiliang. Anyway, the academy was on vacation for 2 months, and he happened to have Ouyang Hong's Emperor Grade Treasure ship with him. Traveling thousands of miles was not a problem at all. Yuan family, wait for me. I will make you regret this. Qin Hao secretly clenched his fists and entered a meditative state again. He began to breathe in and out. When he left the Fengli Temple, he was just a small Yuan master who needed the care of Dan Xian and Chun Kang. Now that Qin Hao had returned and become a terrifying saint-level expert, it could be said that he had returned home in glory. And Little Han, Big Brother Qin Hao will definitely not let you wait for too long. Saint-level expert? No, this was just the beginning. Within 2 years, Qin Hao would break through to the peak of Heavenly Saint, enter the Medicine Valley, cultivate the 9 transformations, and awaken his teacher, Dan Xian. After settling the matters in western Liang, he would go to Daliao, in northern Jiang, to fulfill the 5-year promise with Shaohan. Northern Jiang, like western Liang, there were 3 powerful empires: Daliao, northern Yin, and northern Qi. In terms of national strength, northern Yin was the strongest, followed by northern Qi, and Daliao was the weakest due to years of rebellion and war. However, this was only the overall national strength. In terms of cultivation, Emperor Shao of Daliao was undoubtedly the most ferocious. He had been fighting for more than 10 years and had just stabilized the situation, so he was in high spirits. Because of this, Emperor Yin and Emperor Qi did not dare to act rashly, even though Daliao was currently the weakest. Just as Qin Hao was on his way back to Daqin Prefecture, in Daliao's imperial capital, Royal College, Battle Arena. Swoosh! A sword light that was as fast as a swan suddenly flashed across the field. A luxuriously dressed student with orange light flashing on his body dodged pathetically. He rolled on the ground in an extremely unsightly manner, narrowly avoiding the sharp sword light that was coming towards him. However, the owner of the sword light had already placed the 3-foot-long sword in his hand on his neck. His eyes were clear and bright, his thin lips and thick brows, and his jet black hair hung loosely on his shoulders. He was polite as he spoke, and he gave others an extremely amiable feeling. However, his body was faintly emitting a sharp and imposing aura that made people not dare to approach him. Even standing in front of him made people feel a sense of inferiority. After he arrived, no matter if it was his aura or appearance, he firmly suppressed Duan Ziju and Qi Yuan. It was not difficult to see that his strength was stronger than the two of them. The most important point was that Duan Ziju addressed Xiao Han as Her Highness Jingyu, even though Qi Yuan addressed her as Jingyu. Yet, this young man actually addressed Xiao Han as Xiao Han. Regarding this, the surrounding people did not dare to speak, because he was the crown prince of Northern Yin and also the next emperor of Yin, Murong Zijuan. Greetings, Prince Qi and Crown Prince Zijuan. Yu Dakin bowed in fear. It was even faster than bowing to Duan Ziju, and it was several times more respectful. However, at this moment, whether it was Qi Yuan or Murong Zijuan, they completely ignored Yu Dakin, just like Duan Ziju. To them, Yu Dakin was just an ant. Speaking of which, Little Han, your cultivation is progressing rapidly. Why are you still using such an inferior sword? It's not worthy of you. As soon as Murong Zijuan arrived, he was incomparably concerned about Xiao Han. That's right. Actually, I've long wanted to give Jingyu a suitable sword. Qi Yuan's movements were not slow at all. As soon as Murong Zijuan finished speaking, his palm flashed, and a pitch-black scabbard appeared in his hand. He did not give Murong Zijuan any chance to curry favor with Xiao Han. Jingyu, this sword was a reward given to me by Imperial Father when I helped the refugees of Daki last year. Although I feel that it's not worthy of you, and although it's only a quasi-sacred artifact and might not be worth a single coin to you, it was something that I painstakingly exchanged with military merits. I hope that you can accept it and let it accompany you day and night. It will accompany you. As he spoke, Qi Yuan handed the sword to Xiao Han and looked at her with a serious expression. His eyes were even pleading. It's only a quasi-sacred artifact. Prince Qi is giving it to our Daliao's princess Jingwei. Could it be that you're looking down on our Daliao? At this moment, Duan Ziju took a step forward and blocked Qi Yuan with a gloomy expression. He was also cursing in his heart. Who gave you the courage, Qi Yuan, to be so close to Her Highness Jingyu? Did you ask me? Immediately, Duan Ziju's hand flashed, and a purple scabbard appeared out of thin air. He turned around, and his gloomy face immediately turned into a sunny smile. He looked at Xiao Han and said, Your Highness Jingyu, my status is much lower than Prince Qi's, and I'm not as compassionate as Prince Qi to help the refugees. However, my imperial father and I obtained this sword when we accompanied Emperor Xiao to quell the rebellion and fought bloody battles on the battlefield. Duan Ziju's face turned solemn as he said this. This sword belonged to our Daliao's former Minister of War, Kong Mingjun. The Minister of War was one of the criminals who persecuted Emperor Xiao and your imperial mother. In order to avenge your family, my imperial father killed him regardless of his life, and I took his sword. I'm sharing this honor with you. I hope that you can accept it. It's a true mid-grade sacred artifact. Duan Ziju said with unusual sincerity. In other words, this sword meant a lot to him. Tisk, Murong Zijuan sneered and pointed at Duan Ziju. I say, Prince Duan, you secretly hid a traitor's weapon. You have ulterior motives. Moreover, you even gave such an ominous item to Xiao Han. Oh, I understand. Murong Zijuan's face turned cold, and he shouted in a deep voice, "Do you want Xiao Han and Kong Ming Jun to end up like your father? Do you want to be a traitor too?" As the crown prince, Murong Zijuan faintly had the aura of an emperor. His shout was quite imposing. In an instant, Duan Ziju was scared silly. He originally wanted to curry favor with Xiao Han, but in the end, Crown Prince Zijun, don't slander us and drive a wedge between us. Both my imperial father and I are loyal to Emperor Xiao and Her Highness Jingyu. Enough. I'm tired. Please help yourselves. Xiao Han had enough of these 3 teddy bears in heat. She turned around and prepared to leave. From the beginning to the end, she didn't even look at the 3 of them. Duan Ziju chuckled. At that time, even if Xiao Han wanted to save him, it would be too late. Qin Hao would have already become a ghost under Qi Yuan and Murong Zijuan's blade. The more Yu Dakin heard, the more shocked he was. Duan Ziju's plan of killing 3 birds with 1 stone was simply too ruthless. It was too vicious. Firstly, he would win the favor of Princess Xiao Han. Secondly, he would make Princess Xiao Han hate Prince Qi and Crown Prince Zijun. Most importantly, he would borrow the hands of others to get rid of Qin Hao, this great threat. Vicious, truly vicious. Duan Ziju was truly a hungry wolf that couldn't be tamed. This subordinate will set off immediately. Although Yu Dakin felt disdain, he didn't dare to disobey. He took the command medallion and prepared to head to the Warlord Manor. Wait, if you dare to leak the slightest bit of this matter, do you know the consequences? After Duan Ziju finished speaking, he suddenly stomped on the ground. With a loud bang, the ground cracked. His intention was very clear. If Yu Dakin was leaked, then the Yu clan would be like the ground. Duan Ziju only needed to lightly stomp on the ground to crush him. This subordinate understands. Yu Dakin's forehead was covered in cold sweat as he rushed out without stopping. Hee, you want to fight with me? You 2 little princes are still too inexperienced. A sinister light flashed in Duan Ziju's eyes, and he also disappeared into thin air. This time, he would definitely make it difficult for Qin Hao to escape from this calamity. 2 days later, Qin Hao and Saiowa steered the treasured ship. They were already not far from the Jiang Empire's border. After teasing each other, the 2 of them had recovered to their peak state. At this moment, they stood on the ship and looked down. The towering mountains in front of them were so familiar. "Big brother, we are almost there." Saiowa's voice was a little nervous as he stared down without blinking. He was afraid that if they were late, the ground would be covered with corpses. He was even more afraid that those corpses were the people he was most familiar with. Don't worry, Miss Xianchen's information is absolutely reliable. According to the time calculation, with the Yuan family's marching speed, they will at most reach the Jiang Empire's hinterland. We won't be late, Qin Hao said calmly, but in his heart, he was also a little anxious. He wished he could grow 10 wings and fly to his 4th uncle immediately. For some reason, at this moment, the corners of Qin Hao's eyes suddenly twitched. He felt an inexplicable sense of danger. However, this sense of danger was not caused by the Yuan family. It came very strangely. "Big brother, what's wrong?" Saiowa saw that Qin Hao's face was sweating. The battle was about to break out, and they still had to rely on their big brother to fight against the enemy's general. Nothing must happen now. Don't worry, maybe I didn't rest well. Qin Hao casually found an excuse and patted Saiowa's shoulder to calm down. However, Qin Hao frowned again. His intuition had always been accurate. This sense of danger was definitely not unfounded. Then, who was preparing to make a move against them? Shaking his head, Qin Hao shook his head. Saving people was the most important thing now. At this moment, they had completely stepped into the territory of the Jiang Kingdom. Looking down, there was billowing smoke everywhere. Corpses were strewn all over the ground, and blood flowed like rivers. A living hell of a ruined country appeared in front of the 2 of them. Even if they were flying high in the sky, they could still smell it from 10,000 meters away. The smell of blood below. 50 miles north of Heaven's Wall City, The Crimson Peak Canyon. The Crimson Peak Mountain was 8,000 meters tall. There was a crack in the middle of the mountain. If one looked carefully, this crack seemed to have been cut open by a knife. This crack also ran through the entire mountain, dividing the Crimson Peak Mountain into two, forming a thin line. This thin line was the canyon of the Crimson Peak Mountain. This place originally belonged to the Jiang Empire. As Qin Hao had exchanged 20 big cities for 6 small cities in the south of the Jiang Empire during the martial arts competition, the Crimson Peak Canyon became the boundary between the Jiang Empire and the Daqing Prefecture. At this moment in the canyon, there was a city wall that was 300 feet tall. This city wall was originally not there, but now it had risen from the ground. It was very spectacular. Moreover, it was not an ordinary city wall. It was obviously much taller than the other city walls. Then, the wall had been filled with molten iron, which made the already solid city wall even more solid. It was like a complete iron lump, impregnable. On the city wall, there was a black mass of soldiers. It was like a vast sea, crowded and unbearable. Behind the city wall, there were all kinds of war weapons piled up. Slings, crossbows, and throwing spears that were shining with cold light. All of them were exceptionally fierce, giving people a suffocating sense of oppression. Reporting to Governor and State Preceptor Chun, the Sky Dragon Army and the allied forces of the 4 countries have begun to enter the canyon. Chapter 464. The soldiers knew how powerful the Tianlong Kingdom was, and they also knew that there was a huge gap between the two armies. In this battle, the Great Qin Mansion was destined to perish. However, there was no fear on his face. On the contrary, there was excitement and excitement. In fact, he wasn't the only one. The millions of Great Qin Mansion's men on the city walls all had the same attitude, as if they were facing death with equanimity. In order to survive, in order to fight for the last hope for their children, they were ready to die in battle. On the platform on the city wall, an old man with white hair and a white beard waved his hand, and the city gate opened. The young soldiers were let in, and the gate was closed again. It also meant that a bloody battle was about to begin. "I'm so sorry, Master Chun. The Qin family has dragged the Fengli Temple down." The old man who was called Lord by the young soldiers was the old leader of the Qin family. He was Qin Hao's grandfather, Qin Shilong. Qin Hao was still studying at the Scarlet Sun Martial Institution, and the position of the institution head couldn't be left empty. He had braced himself and accepted this responsibility. He originally wanted to wait for Qin Hao to return from his studies before passing the position to him. Who knew that a disaster would happen? Qin Hao had killed the only grandson of the Grand Duke of the Tianlong Kingdom, the only heir of the Yuan family. Now, the news of the 6 million-strong army coming for revenge had already spread like wildfire. In just a few minutes, they had conquered the most fortified city in the Jiang Kingdom. Then, in 4 days, they had conquered the entire Jiang Kingdom. Facing such an overwhelming force, Jiang Huang had thought about surrendering. Yuan Huai's father, Yuan Yi, had also agreed to do so. However, as soon as Jiang Huang walked out of the city, he was killed by Yuan Yi. The purpose of the Yuan family was as clear as day. Anyone who was related to Qin Hao, even if they had the slightest connection, would die without a burial place. Therefore, after this battle, no one in the Daqing Prefecture will be left alive. "Since you call me State Preceptor Chun, why do you say that I'm a burden?" Chun Kang, who was dressed in a purple robe and had a handsome face, spoke with a smile. He didn't seem nervous at all. Qin Hao was a disciple of Fengli Temple and had saved his daughter's life. On the day that Daqing Prefecture was established, the Fengli Temple was made the state religion. This was a great honor. Chun Kang felt that his life was worth it. The only fly in the ointment was that he hadn't had his fill of being the state preceptor. Look at all the soldiers in the city. Which one of them is afraid of being implicated by you? It was like an ancient beast, and there were a lot of warriors of the Daqin prefecture standing on top of it. If they were to shoot arrows randomly, Wu Yingxiong and the other two warriors would be turned into porcupines on the spot. Archers! Right then, as Wu Yingxiong and the other two got closer, someone on top of the city wall shouted as expected. The voice was extremely loud. It was Qi Daxiong, who was 2 meters tall. He was now the chief commander of the Daqin prefecture, as well as the general. He did not care about his own life anymore. He stood on top of the battlements and raised his arm. Swoosh! Hundreds of thousands of strong bows were pulled open at the same time. The shiny arrowheads were aimed at Wu Yingxiong. The three felt their scalps go numb. Brothers, don't shoot. Don't be nervous. We don't mean any harm. Wu Yingxiong said. F*CKU. Why would you bring so many people if you don't mean any harm? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? Go eat shit. Qi Daxiong pointed at the city wall and laughed. Therefore, the explosive flame army next to him, which was the former Furious Bear mercenary group of the explosive flame city, took the lead and laughed. Even the millions of soldiers on the city wall laughed. Were the 3 emperors sent by monkeys to make fun of them? Were they here to drink tea and chat? Malabar! Yuan Lang could not stand it anymore. He rode his horse and rushed over. Wu Yingxiong and the other 2 emperors were too shameful and cowardly. Hey, you trash on the city wall? I am Yuan Lang, your ancestor. Open the city gate quickly and come out to die. I can still be merciful and let your families go. Otherwise, with one order, the iron hooves of the Yuan family will flatten your mountains and rivers, burn your fields, and kill you all, your wives, daughters, and children. Yuan Lang shouted loudly. His deep voice reverberated back and forth in the canyon, giving people a strong deterrent force. Wu Yingxiong and the other 2 acted according to the situation. They quickly hid behind Yuan Lang. Although this old Mr. Qin Shilong is known as some bullshit palace master, in my eyes, he is still a bumpkin, a lowly commoner. Sorry, I'm too direct. It's a good habit that I've cultivated since I was young, Yuan Lang said with a smile. He looked down on Qin Shilong. His words angered the soldiers of the Daqin prefecture. Qin Shilong was the grandfather of the young governor, Qin Hao. How could he be humiliated like this? If Qin Shilong was a country bumpkin, then what were the soldiers? General Yuan Lang, please don't hurt people with your words. Do some good for your descendants so that you don't ruin the bloodline of a Yuan family. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. I just want to ask one thing from you. Normally, Hai Fei Zi wouldn't take Yuan Lang seriously. But now, he had no choice but to lower his posture. After he finished speaking, he even bowed deeply to Yuan Lang. Old Six felt sorry for him. His master was so noble that even the Luo Shui emperor had to be polite to him. But now, he had to bow to a rough man. Uncle Hai, you don't have to be so polite. Your business is Little Wolf's business. Just say it, Yuan Lang replied with a smile. His eyes flashed with disdain. In fact, he had guessed what Hai Fei Zi wanted to say, but he still wanted to hear it from his mouth. After all, it was very honorable for a counselor of the Merchant Union to beg him like a dog. I want to ask you to let the Daqin prefecture live. For this, I'm willing to give you 200 million mysterious crystals, 20 million earth crystals, and a low-grade sky crystal. Hai Fei Zi bent over from beginning to end. Because he was too fat, he was sweating profusely in a short moment. But for Qin Hao's family, he didn't care about bending over and begging. Even if he was asked to kneel, he would agree without hesitation. It was all because of the 500,000 taels of gold that Qin Hao had given him. When everyone abandoned Haidafu, only Qin Hao was willing to do everything to help. Qin Hao didn't abandon him, and he wouldn't abandon Qin Hao's family. Thump, thump, thump. At this moment, the sound of a strong heartbeat suddenly came from the field. Maybe ordinary soldiers didn't know what mysterious crystals and earth crystals meant, but the generals of the Yuan family knew better than anyone else. That was a huge fortune and also a huge treasure trove. Mysterious crystals were not only the currency between the empires, but also the necessary cultivation gem for practitioners. God, 200 million mysterious crystals and 20 million earth crystals. How many great warriors could be created? How many peerless geniuses could be raised for the family? To put it bluntly, the crystals that Hai Dafu threw out could double the power of the whole row of generals. Not to mention that piece of sky crystal. Only the royal family deserved to have sky crystal. Even the trashiest piece of low-grade heaven crystal was enough to create a peak heavenly saint expert.